it's really fun to look at the Percy Jackson series especially and see how Rick is very like,
Yes.
this is what I think.
Well, and it comes so traumatized people like us, people who have been wronged by trying to be a part of this society that tells us we have to be individualistic, we have to go for our chaos, we need to make our mark amongst people. People like you and me, like the whole reason we do this is because we want to talk about trauma with younger people in a way that's accessible.
Hmm.
Like, that is literally the whole reason we were like, what resource would I have wanted to talk about these things? And decided, okay, I guess it's got to be us, right?
Hmm.
Um, but Rick sees that. Rick likes that quality in heroes. We see that he named Percy after, like the one hero that survived. That means something to him. We see that, like Percy, his fatal flaw is loyalty and it's his greatest strength at the same time. I know we like to argue like it's not his fatal flaw in the sense that people say it is, because he
Hmm.
does let it go at the right moments. He's
Yep.
actually very balanced with it. But at the same time, loyalty can be one of his flaws, especially when it comes to like that main trio. Those are the ones that he'll let it go. Like he won't let it go for.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's just it's just fun to like look at this story from Rick and see how he was like, I wish that these heroes would have made different decisions. And now that I'm in charge, I can make them do that differently, and you can't
Yes.
stop me. And,
Yes,
and
it's
that's
very teachery. I love it.
yeah. And I feel like because we talked about how we like to do this, because we like to make trauma more accessible, we have to talk about what happened with Becky.
Yeah. I okay. So I still don't know how to feel about this. I'll let you intro it because she said it to you. Like,
I don't know. I don't think I'll ever know how to, like, I don't think either one of us will ever be able to,
no.
like, fully grasp this without just, like, staring off into space and being like, did that really happen? But, um, the reason, like, I know there's a part of the thing with Percy Jackson that's really fun with it is that because there's a huge age group of people who read these books, people like them for different, very different reasons, and they talk about them for very different reasons. And sometimes I feel like we're so serious that because we talk about it in like a more serious way, but it's just how we are, and it's why we like it. And so that's why we talk about it. And so we like Percy, at least we like Percy Jackson stuff and like talking about it because it's a story that centers abused kids and it gives a very accessible way to talk about these issues that happen because it's set in like this fantastical world and they just kind of like make everything more magical, but it's the same issues and problems you have when you're just a normal kid going through this stuff. And so I always like remember when I read the book, the first book for the first time, and Gabe is like talked about as the worst person, and then he's killed at the end of the first book. And in the same thing with the TV show, he kills himself basically. And there's like no storyline about like, oh, but he's actually a good person and you need to forgive him because he realized that he was wrong. There's none of that shit. It's like goodbye, you're horrible. I'm going to kill you now. Let's move on. And that's always a big deal to see somebody who reminds you of the horrible people in your life and but they're like positioned as the villains, like Luke and Zeus and people like that that you're it's like it makes you feel like, "Oh, this is like a place where I'm safe." And so when we talk about Percy Jackson stuff, it's like the whole reason why we like to talk about it is to try to make that stuff accessible. And I don't know if like we would talk about this sometimes when we haven't read a Percy Jackson book in like five
Yeah.
months. We haven't mentioned it recently, but we used to talk about when we were reading them that like the characters in these books are obviously based on people that Rick and Becky actually knew because this is very much like a story that they both wrote together, like where they were writing about trauma experiences that they felt that they went through together. And if you ever try to ask them who they base these people on, you should die. Never ask a traumatized person things like that. You don't deserve to know that. Nobody deserves to know that. But it's just obvious that that is what's going on here with this story. Like, I've never watched an interview with them ever. on like any podcast, anything ever, because I'm like, why do I need to know more than what's in these books? Like, I know who these people are. I read these books that they made, that they like literally put like their entire like heart and soul and everything into it, that they dedicate their entire lives doing. I don't need to know more about them beyond this. I know that they're good people from how they wrote these stories. And I
Mhm.
can follow them on social media and stuff, but that's all I like. I don't need to know more. I don't need to know
Yeah.
more than that. I got it. I got who they are. And so we we had this idea to make like an ebook sort of thing that we would sell for free using like the Percy Jackson characters and stuff to explain just like kind of like the basics of abuse stuff, because there's so many things that you like learn, and there's so many like the thing that I said in the last episode was like angry life coaches.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of like maybe not the best people on the internet that usually teach people those initial things that kind of get you lost, and then you kind of like figure out like the like a more grounded way eventually. But I was like, what if we just like write something using these characters in this book series that a lot of people already love,
Mhm.
and we just do it that way, and we explain these concepts that way to make it easy to understand, but and also not be like screaming
Yeah.
about narcissism. I will never use
Yeah.
that
We
word
don't need to
in a
be another voice talking about narcissistic
no.
abuse. Like
If you
you guys get the picture clearly.
if you ever see me say call somebody a narcissist, I have been abducted, and that is a robot. I
That's when
will.
we know that's Shannon's sign that she
Yeah,
is telling us she's abducted without telling us.
yeah, that is never. That will never. I will never. I hate how much people talk about that. And so anyway, so for the last couple weeks, I was putting off just asking Becky about like, is it okay that we would do this? And especially
Mhm.
because of copyright stuff, I just wanted to make sure that we wouldn't like mess up their copyright or anything. But genuinely, I was like, I feel like I need to ask her if it's okay that we do this, because this is like her and her husband's entire life.
Mhm.
And I feel like the least amount of respect you can give them is to ask them first, is it okay if I use your characters to try to explain to kids about abuse stuff? Is that something that
Mhm.
you'd be okay with us doing? And so I finally, after like many weeks of just being afraid that she would be like, no, because I have trauma. And that's how that stuff comes up, of being afraid that people I respect a lot will like smack me down, even though that hasn't happened in a while now. But either way, I just sent her a message on Friday and was like, hey, my friend and I do this thing. We wanted to do this ebook. Is it okay if we do that? Blah, blah, blah. Um, and just thinking that she would be like, yes, that's fine, or no, that's not fine. Instead, I don't know, like an hour or so after after I sent her that, I saw, oh, I have a notification on Threads. Let me go look and see if it's her. And it's her saying that she found our YouTube channel and watched our last video and like at least started it. Like
Yeah.
the thing that she said was like, I'm just gonna, I have my iPad because I made notes
Yeah, go ahead.
for Battle of the Labyrinth stuff, so I'm just gonna read it. She said, started listening to the recent pod and she put like the emoji face where you were like stressed. And she said like one of the hardest things about adapting the books has been sitting in a writer's room listening to people talk about Rick and my trauma and then being asked what we think. They are just characters to the writers, but hello, you're talking about our inner demons. Come on now. Writer's room equals therapy session is just so super weird. And then she
Yeah.
was like, basically, like, you can just look up copyright stuff. And I was just like, Becky, like, saw that message I sent her and looked, she watched our
She
video.
watched our podcast.
She watched not only did she watch our video, she watched the video we made talking about scapegoats and golden child, which is like our entire like us putting like everything of who we are as a person out there for people. Like I don't
Yeah.
know if I make it as obvious to people, but like when I'm talking about stuff with Percy, I'm talking about myself. I'm just saying Percy's name because it's so
Yes.
much easier to talk about the stuff you've been through when using like this other thing. Like if I ever met the two of them one day, I would ask them over and over again, like, how did you do this? Like, how did you put like all of this stuff out there for people to read and have opinions on and do think pieces about and have people like defend Luke when Luke is somebody that hurt likely both of them in some horrible way. And it's like,
Hmm.
how did you get past the like absolutely like terror of putting like your entire like soul out there for people to just like judge? I don't know how they did that because it is terrifying to even think about doing that. That's why we started talking about this stuff, because we couldn't handle doing that. And
Hmm.
so the fact that she watched that video of us talk, and the video that she watched was us just saying like, Percy is a scapegoat because of these reasons, because I'm a scapegoat and this is the kind of stuff I dealt with. And then you saying like Thalia is a golden child because I did this stuff like a golden child. And the fact that she like listened to that and was like, yeah, I'm gonna leave this comment talking about how the writer's room doesn't understand how like triggering and like probably low-key traumatizing it is for them to be like questioning like by questioning the decisions that these characters are making, they're basically questioning the choices that they
Yeah.
made when they were younger. Like, can you imagine? Like, can I even imagine somebody coming up to me and being like, "Why did this character make this choice?" And it's like, I don't know, because I was young and super traumatized and going through hell and didn't have anyone else to talk to. And it's just like a wild thing. And it was just like a really amazing thing that she watched our video at all and then came
Hmm.
back to it basically talking to us as if she knew that we would understand what she was talking about, that we would understand what it's like, that people don't get when you're like putting yourself out there like that and what you're really trying to say. And then also the fact that she was basically telling us like, you're right about Percy Jackson, like this is why we wrote this story and this is why we put it out there, and you guys like get it basically, because she's telling us that that's why she did it. And that's what we've always said. And it's like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
Like I like just kept crying about it over the weekend because I was just like, that
It's
is,
like Rick Riordan knows who we are
yeah,
potentially. Like,
like
oh my gosh, that thought. Like,
like Rick and his wife like know who we are and like what we're doing. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like the sometimes the like internet stuff can be hard, um
mhm,
because I know that I'm not somebody that like people usually follow a lot online, because I
mhm.
don't do the things that people are supposed to do because I just don't want to do them.
Yeah,
And I
we're
can't,
both too neurodivergent to pick a genre or what
yeah.
is it? Say pick a niche. What do people
Yeah.
say?
And I just can't, and I can't force myself to do them. I know that I'm going to say things at some point that are going to make people upset because I
Hmm.
just have a different way of looking at things than everyone else.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just hard when you see people like getting like more success than you and you feel like what you're doing doesn't really matter. But it's like, who cares? Like genuinely, who cares if the video that we posted that didn't get that many views, when one of the views that watched it was Becky Riordan? And she watched it and was like, yeah, I really like you guys. I couldn't watch your video because for the whole thing, because you were saying accurate things, because it was like getting to her, because it was like, oh, these people are saying exactly what happened. And it's just, that's an amazing thing at all. And we don't like idolize them in that way, like in an unhealthy
No.
way. Like this whole thing honestly made me laugh about the whole Epic the musical thing, that this is like such a different way. Like Jorge is just ridiculous with his fans and is like, you can have access to me if you join this secret Discord or join my Patreon and give me money or do these other things for me, and I'll just like look the other way when you harass people in my name because I like that you give me attention. And then here's like a tiny little YouTube channel that only has like 220 something subscribers, and just asking like, hey, is it okay if I make this thing based on like your lifetime trauma? And she goes and like checks it out because she's curious and watches one of our videos, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's just like, are you kidding me? And so that was really great, because without like sounding too ridiculous about it, like we basically want to do like what Rick and Becky did, like be
Mhm.
able to like do something like that, like put yourself out there like that and help a lot of people, like kids that went through a lot of stuff, and still be able to like stay yourself and like not, give everything away in that sort of a way. Like nobody knows
Yeah.
who they're talking about, and we don't ever need to know. But they still put it
Mm.
all out there for people anyway. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I keep looking. I get that every once in a while somebody else like likes that comment that I left, and I'm just like, what is going on? I just like I can't believe that that actually happened. Like when I saw that, I sent her the screenshot. I was like, Becky watched our YouTube channel. Should we just like stop now? I was like, no.
No, it
It
gets better from here. It gets better from here.
it had the opposite reaction where we're like, okay, now like we feel like we can do anything because it's like, well, we've been talking about this for a year, a little over a year. And the one of the
Mhm.
people that created this entire thing basically told us like, yeah, you're exactly right about everything that you talk about. And it's like, okay, now I'm never going to shut up.
Yeah.
Because now I know that that's true. And
Yeah.
that's like what we want to do. Yeah, that was just that's exactly why we do this stuff. And to get that sort of feedback from them was just like, and never once in a million years did I ever think asking her that would make her want to like look at anything that we've ever made. I was like, did Becky Riordan watch a video that I like edited myself on my phone? If I knew she was gonna watch it, I would have worked on it for longer.
Yeah, seriously. But she heard us talk scapegoats, golden child, which is our the heart of our like what we bring to this table. So it's really like if she was gonna watch anything, yeah, okay, that one makes sense.
Yeah, like literally, like it goes back to like everything. Like the only reason why we know each other is
Mhm.
because somebody was bothering her about using like a term of emotional incest, and I just literally like busted in and was like, "Shut up!
Yep.
Stop being mean! Stop gatekeeping a term that shouldn't be gatekeeped. Go away!" And that's literally
Yeah,
the only reason why we know each other. And so,
seriously.
and so it literally is like every if we didn't talk about that online, we never would have ever like met each other or become friends or nothing like that would have ever happened. And who knows how stupid our lives would be right now if if that happened.
Yeah.
It would be depressing. But
I
I don't
think things
remember.
are on the upswing for both of us though. Like I really
Mhm.
do. And not just pod wise, but like you have a job now. You're doing good with your family. Like you're getting lots of family time in that you never thought you would get, getting to bond
Mhm.
with your niece. Like I have 10 million things going on at once right now. And suddenly, all of a sudden, I'm getting more and more sparks. And it's like, what the hell is happening right
I
now?
know. It's like every day we get like a new idea and a fun idea, and it's like let's just keep it feels it feels very like the only way I know how to describe it is like it feels very equal. Like we both have things that we're doing and then outside of what we're doing here, but then they also give us new ideas for
Yeah.
this. And it just makes it really easy to do and really fun. And I'm not sure that it ever would have worked this way with anybody else. Like
Yeah.
I don't think it would have because we're basically like forcing the other person to get over their like insecurities.
Basically, yeah. Like it's kind of funny because I I've mentioned my best friendship that went wrong that I had
Mhm.
at the beginning of this pod, and I always thought that that was my lesson in friendship that I was supposed to take, but no, like this one has been my lesson in friendship. Like the distance has made it so that anytime either of us gets emotional about anything, we can step away and like not feel hurt by each other from it because we're online friends, so it's like we're not always going to be at our phones. It just naturally started happening that way, and now like I know we consciously do it where it's like I'm going to step away from my phone for a few seconds because I'm super overwhelmed and I know Shannon's going through something, but I need to take a second.
Yeah.
And like you do the same where you're like, she's got a lot going on. We'll talk later. It's fine. I'll leave all these messages for her and she'll get to them when she has time. Like you don't
Mhm.
get insecure that I don't always answer and stuff. And also just like for me being able to take those pauses, like I've never gotten mad at you, like it's never
Mhm.
been like that, but if I did, I know that I could take that breather and be like, yeah, I'm not going to answer her for a while, but like I'm going to
You'll
come
be
back to
fine.
this.
I think that the distance, the fact that we've never met each other or even been in the
Yeah,
same state as each other at the same time
yeah,
means
that's
that we
crazy.
like it basically made us like work through all of our like unhealthy things that we did in every other friendship where we
Hmm.
like physically couldn't do them as easily. And
Hmm.
so because we did that, it made us like stop and like think like, oh, I like this person. I don't want to mess this up. So like what can I do to not mess this up?
Mhm.
And it just made us think more that if we were around each other now, it would be fine. We
Yeah,
wouldn't do that stuff because we've, been friends for 3.5 years now.
yeah.
And so we figured out how to not do that. But we had in the beginning part, the first couple years, we had to like do that stuff to figure out how to do that. Um,
Mhm.
because it's hard to like have relationships when your childhood is fucked up.
It really is. And like learning even things of like we don't always agree on stuff. I know a lot of the stuff we come to the pod with is stuff that we agree on, but like I get sucked into drama that Shannon's like, why are you even watching that?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
it happens all the time where she's like, all of these people are trash. I'm not watching any of it. And like, and I'm like sucked into the drama. Like, but wait, the Brazilian Jenkins. Like, I can't stop watching.
Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah,
that's why it like works because when
yeah,
we don't agree, we're not like coming at each other. It's just like, "Oh, I thought of it like this." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And then we just move on because that's all it is. It's like how healthy relationships are supposed to be.
exactly.
We can switch to
Yeah.
like Percy stuff. So before we start
Okay.
doing Percy stuff, I want to talk about a couple things that are like Percy
TV
related
show
stuff.
or
Um, one small thing with with the show is that it was nominated for another award show. It's an award show in Canada.
yeah.
It's
I
like
had someone
a
criticize the writing. They won. They definitely won something on that one, right?
ay 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 yeah,
Well,
they
and
won't.
I'll admit I was kind of snappy because I was like, what do people actually have against the TV show? So I kind of was like, I don't think that they're going to listen to racist haters when they were like, I hope people listen to the critics with the TV show.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't think they're going to listen to racist haters because that's the only criticism that I've heard, like and or like stupid stuff like they didn't show enough abuse with Gabe. It wasn't the mom
Yeah.
who turned him into a stone. Stupid stuff. I've never seen someone make a like actual argument that is an argument,
Yeah,
and they said the
I
writing.
the thing I always say about Gabe is that I don't want like an actual child to be screamed at and or like have to act scenes like that out unless you don't have to. And then also you don't have to that's not the only way to show that Percy was affected by what happened to him. Like in the people get so fixated on certain scenes because they've wanted to see those scenes adapted, so they like forget the scenes that are actually in there. Like in the first episode, you see Percy yelling at his mother because he thinks that she's lying to him and he thinks that he's hallucinating. And he's mad at Sally because he thinks that she's just making up this extravagant lie so that he doesn't have to, like, to try to like support him. Like he literally like mumbles something about like unbelievable that he's like sure that this is going to be the thing that makes her stop like supporting him like without any questions. And he's like, what, how are you still like lying to try to make me feel better about this? And so it's like
Yeah.
he's talking about how he thinks he's severely mentally ill and is hallucinating things because of what's been happening to him. If you notice that and recognize that, you don't need the other scenes to show, you don't have to literally show it happening because you see like the effect of it happening on him in different ways that maybe weren't in the original book, but the it doesn't matter. Like the scene is still there and it makes like the impact that you would really want it to make. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Oh, it
so
was like another big scene, like the spiders thing, but that was more about setting up later books, which, like this
mhm.
TV show, we don't know how much TV show we are getting.
Yeah,
Like, that's why.
I know we talked about this before, but like the reason why the spiders were in that scene is because you it was showing Annabeth being scared. And so the entire point of that scene was to show Annabeth not being able to fight and Percy having to help her as a way to show her being vulnerable so that to show them becoming better friends. In the fifth episode of the show, they have her freaking out about Percy dying. And that is a much better story. You don't need a bunch of scary spiders when she's screaming at Hephaestus, I refuse to leave this place until you help my friend because he is a better person than me. And I didn't realize that until I think he might die. And please, like, fix this because I refuse to leave because I want to be a good person like him. Like, who cares? who cares if there isn't a bunch of spiders? But if you're like that fixated on like seeing the scene from the book and you don't even understand why they even had that scene in the first place, then you're gonna, that's why I don't care about any of the like critiques that people give the show, because it's mostly that like you don't understand what they're even trying to do.
Yeah.
So if you let them just do it and like adapt it, you would really you would understand that it's a very good adaptation of a book series. The heart
Yeah.
of it is still there. Like shockingly, Rick Riordan wrote all of it. Like so
Or like
one
he
of
outlined the episodes.
yes, and like that was one of the things I wanted to say. Rick's like posts, I don't know what to call them still, on
Blue
Blue Sky
Sky.
today. I was like,
I don't know.
this is like the stereotype of an Aries moon with a Gemini like sun just done, because he was like, "Oh, I'm writing the third like Percy getting his like senior recommendation letters book. I'm like meeting with the writers and they're going over the outline that I wrote for season 3 and going through all the episodes, and he has to give the okay for every episode for what they want to do with it." And he's like, "And I'm also writing on 3 different other projects that I can't mention right now."
Yes.
Okay. Like,
Man
oh
is
my
full
goodness.
Aries mode.
But
I
that
don't
is
know
like,
what's in the air right now. It's like for some reason some of us just like sparks.
yeah, and it is like a very Aries moon thing. 'Cause I have an Aries moon too, which I think is funny, because I was like, of course the both of you, both him and Becky have one, because it's just that's how we are. If we have like an idea, we're like, I'm just gonna go do that. Why would I not? Like
Yeah.
let's just go do that. Okay, and
Yep.
and so especially if you're around somebody else who has one, nobody's gonna stop you. You're just gonna keep going. And like
Yeah.
that's like my favorite joke about him is like what people are like, how does he write so many books? And it's like because that's just what our brains are like. We are thinking all the time. And if we have like an outlet for it, we're just going to keep doing that outlet over and over and over again until somebody like physically makes us stop. But if you're not going to make us stop, we're just going to keep doing it.
Yep.
Um, and so that's what he's doing there, which was it was just funny seeing him put all that in like 20 words on like in like a Blue Sky post, and I was just like, I'm tired
Yes.
from reading that, much less you somehow figuring out how to do it. And the other thing that is like very tangentially related that I wanted to talk about is the whole Ryan Reynolds thing before we go
Oh
into
gosh,
Battle
yes.
Labyrinth. So I have to talk because this it is just so weird how things involving like Walker being around this person continue to like come up somehow. And so there was this clip, I don't know where it came from. It sounds like a cast
Podcast or
commentary.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that um for the new Daredevil movie that came out last summer. And it's this clip of Ryan Reynolds's 8-year-old daughter yelling out a very like vulgar adult sounding line. Like it honestly made me feel like sick when I heard it the first time. And I don't even know if I can even say it on like a social
I don't even
media.
remember exactly what like it was yeah.
I watched it a couple times today to try to remember it, but it was basically like 8-year-old little 7 8 year old kid with like the Deadpool like mask and stuff on, yelling like if I wanted to ask your opinion, I would ask you to take um what's his name,
Wolverine.
Wolverine's dick out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And in like the thing, he then Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy, who is the director, start talking about how that is his seven at I think she was 7 years old at the time daughter that did that, and then they talk about how they made her do it 70 to 500 times to get it right, and that she didn't want. And the first thing he says is she didn't want to do it, and that it wasn't until he started asking other people to see if they would do it that she like changed her mind. But she didn't want to do it, and it's also the thing that she's wearing a mask the whole time. And so you don't even have to like have her actually do it. You could have had somebody do the
A
voiceover
voiceover.
for the part, but the way that that like connects a little bit back to Walker is that the rumors of the part that he was going to play was that part was she's playing kid pool in that part and says that line. And it makes me like uncomfortable to think about like 14-year-old, 15-year-old Walker even saying that line, much less an 8-year-old. But it's just weird that like that is the part that he was supposed to play, and they thought that he was too old, that he was too tall, and that his voice changed too much. And it's like, why do you want a child that sounds like a child to yell something out like that? Like, why do you want that? Like, that is just so weird. And overall, like, the part of that I wanted to just mention is why we talk about child actors a lot, is that Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy, like Sean Levy is the godfather to the youngest sibling of those kids. Like he is not just a person, he is somebody, he's like a very close family friend. So her father and a very close family friend was telling her and pressuring her to do this. And they are the two most powerful people on that set. You know that hundreds of adults were watching her having to yell that line over and over and over and over again. And none of them could step in and stop it because it was these people, her dad and the director, that were having her do it. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
they can't. They literally like can't do it. And I guess the point of that is like if you want to believe that like Hollywood has changed, it has not changed at all. That was filmed last year. And
Yeah.
like Blake Lively used a body double because she didn't think that her body was good enough yet to be in like a the jumpsuit thing for her like Deadpool role. She used her body double, but they make her their actual kid stand in and yell that line over and over again when they could have just dubbed it over with somebody who could like just speak like a child,
Yeah.
or they could have just had Walker fucking do it and
Yes.
have it
Yeah,
be
that's what
like,
I brought up when you said it. Yeah.
and it was just
So
like it
I
just
will say the way that Ryan said it, I think it was a threat and not actually happening. That he was like, "Oh, we're going to ask somebody else," which adds
mm-hmm,
another layer to it of him being the dad in the situation. Because of course, like as kids, you want to make your parents happy. My dad's not happy with me. He's so unhappy with me. He's going to have another kid do this thing he wanted me to do. Oh
mm-hmm.
hell no! You know, like
Yeah,
that's the
that's
reaction.
that's automatically the thing that's going to get her to do it, and knew that. Like she said she was uncomfortable with it.
It's
Obviously
manipulation.
any kid that young would be. And I guess the thing that I wanted to just make a point of about that is that the other story that came out about Ryan Reynolds recently that we talked about was when he slapped a 15-year-old kid when it wasn't at all in the script, when he did the Amityville horror movie. And the way that they talked about that movie was he talked about it as like joking about it and was like, "Oh yeah, it was so horrible that I did that, but this kid thought that I was so cool when I did it," and blah blah blah. And like it like very much like kind of makes it hard for people to ever talk about anything because you're the one. It's very disarming when you're the one talking about it, but you're also very like you're being like making fun of yourself or talking badly about yourself when you're talking about it. So it's
Mhm.
hard then as the other person or anyone else involved to be mad at you when you're talking about it and being like, "Oh yeah, that was stupid of me to do," but also joking about it at the same time. It just makes the other person feel like you're being like dramatic if
Yeah.
you bring that stuff up. And he did the exact same thing with this story. Like him and the director both started talking about it in this like clip that is going around now. Nobody had to know that. Like nobody needed to know that. Nobody ever needed to know that. But
Yeah.
they told everybody about it because if they're the ones talking about it and they're like, "Oh yeah, it was so horrible. He says like, "Oh, I'm the best dad in the world because I let her say these words," but blah blah blah. They're like talking about it in like a joking way, but also trying to be like, "Oh yeah, that was something that we did and that's ridiculous that we did that," and things like that. It's like hard for people to like be like, "Why did you do that though?" And especially like the whole point with me and that whole situation with Ryan Reynolds is that um I just wonder what that kid is going to feel like when she is older and there's a clip of her on the internet forever saying that. Like, is she going to I wouldn't like that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't like that somebody, my dad especially, made me say that when I was 8 7 8 years old, and now like people can like just repost that about me whenever they want. um it's just weird. And it's just
Yeah.
also weird that like that was the part that Walker was supposed to have, and for some reason they wanted somebody that sounded younger than him to say a line like that. I don't get it. I just will never get any of that. And it's just, I guess it's just concerning whenever stuff like that shows up and I'm like, okay, this is like
Yeah.
making me really glad that he's never done anything else with him and hopefully will never do anything else with him ever again. Because that is not a person that I want any kid around on set. Because imagine what he's like when if he treated his daughter like that, like what kind of stuff
Yeah.
is he making other kids say on set or just talking to them in that sort of a way? I just don't even want to think about it. And we're never going to know because he's so powerful in Hollywood that unless some like massive documentary comes out about them one day or something where it's like that bad, we're never going to find out. It's just
Yeah.
that's just how Hollywood is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and like what sucks is I my dad's side of the family very much was that kind of like sarcastic, make fun of each other kind of family. And like I'll admit, even Jake's that way. You know, like Jake is totally like the I'm gonna poke fun at you, but Jake does it in a much kinder way than my family did. They were like, let oh, that's a wound, let me dig my finger into it.
Yeah.
and like I can just imagine this poor little girl like doing it over and over and over again. I don't want to say this. They're making me say this. If they don't, I don't do this, they're going to replace me. What does it mean if they replace me? Because I'm 7 and this is my dad. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, oh my gosh,
Well,
all of the emotions.
and especially when you think about like child actors who like want to be child actors, like I'm
Hmm.
not even sure that she even wants to do that. She just like did it because she's like
Nepo.
just their child. Um, but like there's a lot of rejection when it comes to like
Hmm.
child actors, but most of the time the one that is telling you you're not saying the line good enough is not your father and your
Hmm.
godfather.
Yeah.
um, it's usually just like a director, a casting director, your acting coach, whatever. And even though those are things that I like just generally worry about with child actors, of them trying to like please these adults and like not thinking about if the adults are being like asking too much of them, basically, that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. But instead just want to like do it good, basically, and make them happy. But
Hmm.
like it's even worse when you think about it that the people she's trying to please like that by and that they made her say that line a bunch of times
Yeah.
was like people that are her family, that people that like are supposed to love her. And so it makes that sort of rejection even harder when you're not doing it like good enough for those people, like when it's your dad. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I just don't even know why they would tell everybody something like that.
Yeah. And like we were just saying, like, at least Adam Project, like, it seemed like it was an okay product. Like, it didn't seem like too bad. The one thing that I saw that was like the question mark of could there be more like this was there's this scene that's a behind the scenes thing of they're in like a spaceship essentially. Like it can go through time. It goes super, super fast. And so Walker's character is not strapped in. Walker's Adam is not strapped in. Adult Adam is strapped in and piloting. And at one point he like is flying vertical like or sorry, horizontal completely behind Ryan Reynolds, and like Ryan Reynolds had to put Walker's hand on his face to like emphasize it because Walker was being too gentle. And so it's like, okay, he's not afraid to physically get in there in a scene. So, like, could there be more of this?
Mm-hmm.
Potentially. Could he have pushed Walker to say things that Walker may not have been comfortable with? I
Yeah.
mean, Walker was repeating Deadpool, so he's not a good case study in this one. But yeah.
Well, that's part of why I wonder about that is that that was his very first acting role, like
Mhm.
ever. Like I need people to understand this about this
Yes,
child,
very first
that
ever. And he did so good.
yeah, and like that he didn't do anything. Like all the other kids have done like, commercials or like those like cheesy sort of things that you see actors do when they're like just starting out in the industry. His entire acting career is doing the Adam Project, the Secret Headquarters movie, Percy
Mhm.
Jackson, and another movie that hasn't come out yet. That's it.
Yeah, I still need to watch that Secret Headquarters movie, by the way.
And that's literally it. and like 3 out of 4 of those things he is the star. And so it's just like he doesn't know, especially when he's 12, like he wouldn't know what a set is like.
Was he a
um
Capricorn sun or what?
yeah,
What Saturn placement? Yeah.
yeah,
So
and
he's one of those kids that aims to please, and this is what we fear for him.
yeah,
This is like our parasocial, like, oh my God, Walker, don't do this to yourself. Like,
yeah.
and we totally admit to it in this case because
Hmm.
like it comes from a good place. It comes from
Yeah,
saying that this kid is a workhorse
yeah,
and like it doesn't need to be.
yeah. It reminds us of us, honestly, how like the way I look at it is like on the Percy Jackson set, that's a set that is like meant to like help those kids. And so when you have a kid like Walker that wants to do everything really well and needs to like prove himself because he has like no like cred when it comes to that in Hollywood, like he's never done anything, and so everything he does he has to prove that he deserves to be there, because he doesn't have any connections with anyone or anything like that. When you have somebody, a kid like that, that is like very hardworking and wants to prove that they can do it and wants to like improve on what they're doing too, because they just love what they're doing,
Mhm.
it would be very easy to like overwork them. And that's why I pay attention to this stuff, is because I don't want to watch another generation of child actors be just like ripped apart by the
Yeah, and
industry
crash
and
out.
spit out. And so
Yeah.
like even if nobody else listens to what we say besides us, at least we're trying to say something about these kids on the show. And he's the one that I worry about most, just because he's the star and he doesn't have like connections with anyone else in Hollywood the way that all the other kids live in LA. And so it just
Mhm.
is like a different sort of atmosphere, I guess, when you don't have anything and you're suddenly in the middle of all of this stuff. And so when I see that stuff, I'm like, the Percy Jackson set knows he's really hardworking, and they talk about it. They talk about how much they love how hard he works every single day and everything, but they also like take care of him about that. Um,
Mhm.
they don't like overwork him to the point where he's like falling over and exhausted or getting hurt or anything like that. That can happen, but like another production might not care about that. And so
Mhm.
I'm not sure that the Adam Project would have cared about that, and I am very sure that if they didn't, he would have like no idea because of how young he was, how much he loved Ryan Reynolds. He wouldn't
Yeah,
see
how
it as
new
like a
he
bad
was.
thing.
Mhm.
And so it's just one of those things that every time Ryan Reynolds does something like this, I just get like retroactively worried about what happened in the past that we don't even know about. And I just always hope that it wasn't that bad, because I don't want these Percy Jackson kids to have really negative experiences with Hollywood. I'm tired of this like always happening. And I
Mhm.
just want them to have a better experience. And they definitely do on this set. They definitely do when they're doing Percy Jackson. So thank God for that. And they're going to be doing it for a while now, obviously, as they just announced like the
Yeah.
next season, a month after they stop filming. And so they're going to at least be busy with that stuff for some time. But I just want them to have a better experience than every other like kind of generation of Hollywood kids. And Hollywood isn't going to change, obviously. We just talked
Mhm.
about what happened with Ryan Reynolds and his daughter. Everyone stood back and watched that happen and nobody said anything.
Yeah.
And so like that kind of stuff is still going to happen, but I just hope that they can find a way to get through this stuff without it affecting them too much, where they leave it like a lot of other actors do, suddenly talking about all of the horrible things that happened to them that they never
Yeah.
mentioned when they were growing
If they
up.
make it out, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I just don't want it to be
Yeah.
like that with them. Um,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that was the only other thing. So, besides just talking about, we finally started another Percy Jackson book. We finally started
Yes.
Battle of the Labyrinth.
And it was a long intro. We only did two chapters because just the two chapters took up 42 pages in my version, at least. I have
Mm-hmm.
this one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so once again, 16 years since I picked this up, I didn't really remember like exactly how things went down. I remember liking Rachel a lot. And like even though we've only seen so little of her, I still already do, like I can already be like, okay, yeah, I remember she's quirky, she's fun, like, and it's a contrast to super serious Annabeth, while Annabeth is kind of being a bummer in this book. I don't remember the total of it, but like, I'm already feeling the setup happening.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, just from reading the first 2 chapters, I think like the general theme that they wrote with this book is like abusive sort of people that don't act stereotypically abusive. Like they
Mhm.
don't like yell and scream, but they are just as like manipulative because that's like basically every single person in
Mhm.
like the all these different storylines that they set up just in these first couple chapters are kind of doing that. And I like that they are talking about that in this book. It makes sense for them to do it. But it
Mhm.
is something that usually doesn't get talked about that much. Usually the abusive ones are just out of control and screaming and violent and stuff, but sometimes they're like this too. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm glad that they're talking about it. One thing I wanted to say about Rachel is that this is just funny. When I read Bow the Labyrinth for the first time, and The Last Olympian for the first time, I didn't want Percy and Annabeth to get together because I was convinced that Annabeth was
I
the
shipped
mole,
them. Yeah.
and I was terrified that he was going to be betrayed by her, and so I didn't want him to tell her that much stuff, and I didn't want him to trust her that much and things like that because I was like so afraid that she was doing that because she keeps defending Luke. And
Mhm.
so it's like I have very justifiable reasons for why I didn't want that. And then once I realized that she wasn't that person in the last book, I was like, I guess okay, fine. They can like get together, but I wasn't like somebody who is like rooting for them, I guess. And so one thing with this book that I think is going to be really interesting is us reading scenes we've seen a lot of videos about, and then reading them in
Yeah.
context and being like, that's all that scene was. Why is everybody so upset by it? And so the beginning part of this book, the first thing that I wrote about Sally actually
Yeah.
is the whole thing with the beginning of this book is that Paul is a teacher at good high school, and he's been able to somehow convince them to let Percy go to the school, and he's
Mhm.
going to like orientation, and he's of
Yes.
course like really paranoid already about going because he doesn't want to mess this up because this is Paul's school. And
Mhm.
so the like from the beginning I was like, I'm not sure that this was a good life choice that Sally made for him to have him go to Paul's school when she hasn't told Paul about any of the stuff that's going on. And so it's
Yeah.
like, so right away he's talking about how, oh, you haven't told him about me because you don't want it to ruin everything. And so right away he's talking about like, oh yeah, I just he has like 5 million secrets that he's keeping from all these different people in his life in this book, and this is one of them. And I'm like, I'm not sure that Sally putting that sort of pressure on him was a good idea. Even if Paul
Yeah.
probably wanted to help, it's like I'm not sure that this was exactly the best way for him to enter school, was already being worried about what was going to happen there and how and if he was like going to ruin his mom's relationship.
Yeah, like her
Um
brand new relationship, first thing that's made her happy in a long
yeah.
time.
And like the first thing you see is he sees Rachel and he's like, "Oh shit." And he
Yeah.
is like trying to run away from her because of course like the one time that they interacted was at the dam, and he tried to kill her, and but she could like see what was actually there, and he was just
Yeah.
freaked out. And so I would also run away from somebody who I
Yeah.
saw in that like weird of a situation. And he runs into, that's the first time he runs into the, how do you say that word? Impoos.
Empusa.
Yeah.
Empusa.
Yeah.
Empuse I in the plural and empusa in the singular.
And I will say that um they have like a it's I'm very interested to see what you think about them in this book
Yeah.
because they do come up many times, especially
Mhm.
the one Kelly comes up many
Okay.
times
Yeah,
in past this book.
I didn't do enough research to figure out who Kelly specifically is supposed to be, but and Pusai are from Aristophanes, and Aristophanes is one of those ancient writers that I don't necessarily take their mythology seriously because he wrote comedies, and his comedies include a lot of body humor, and
Mm.
that's why we have one leg is a donkey leg and the other leg is brass. Like just think of what that would look like. It would look ridiculous, you know? So it's interesting that he chose to use an Aristophanes based one because that seems to be where most of the early like mentions of Impuzai are. And so I was just like, hmm. But Rick tends to use not very serious monsters at the beginning because he wants Percy to be able to escape quickly and get to school. It's kind of the formula. You
Mhm.
know, face some sort of lower level monster. It's like a lower tier enemy battle. It's not a full Lionel battle, but it's like a silver moblin or some shit. You know?
Yeah, and it also kind of gives like the campiness sometimes of the of like the atmosphere of the stories
Yeah.
by doing that. Um, it is very interesting now thinking about that, like just what he does with them. It'll be interesting to read that again in this book to see like how that kind of transpires in this book with them. Um, but
Yeah.
basically, he ends up running into Rachel at
Hmm.
the assembly. I always think it's funny when they include scenes of Percy at school because I feel like it's Rick just bitching about stupid people that he worked for in the past who like wanted them to do like freshman orientation in June and
Yeah.
other things like that, just making fun of like the ridiculous things that some school administrations would do when he was teaching. It just feels like every single
I'm going to
one.
relocate. I hear William just got into the shower, so he started the fan and everything. Hold on. Out? Do I still have an echo?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because one died.
You're good.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna say? Oh, so the thing with Rachel
Mhm.
that I wanted to talk about, what that I thought was really interesting, is that the fandom stuff with Rachel is just intriguing to me. Um, because they talk about her in this way that I'm not sure is real.
Mhm.
Like and how like there are things that Rachel does that annoy me. Like we don't know this about her yet, but she's very rich, and so that
Oh yeah.
just by default, I'm like, oh my god, get away from me. And and that's definitely something that I feel about her in these books. But um, people are so wrapped up in like this idea that Percy is like being mean or something to Annabeth, and
Mhm.
that so everything to do with like Rachel is like some sort of, I don't know, like how dare he do this or how dare she do this. And so they don't really talk about like the reason why they even got along. And so one part I liked about this is when they're running away from Kelly,
Mhm.
and they're hiding in the band room, and she realizes that he can see all the things that she can see, and he has an explanation for what these things are. And she's
Yeah.
like, oh my god, you like, I thought that I was like losing it my entire life. Like, this is the only person that Percy has met that went through that same experience of
Yeah.
thinking for like many years of his life that he was losing his mind because he kept seeing things that nobody else could see, and then realizing at a certain point that he wasn't losing his mind, that these things were actually real. And so it makes sense why they would like bond or what have you about
Mhm.
that, because that is like a more unique experience than they had. And I was like, oh yeah, I can totally understand why he's friends with her throughout this book and in the next one.
Yeah.
Because that's like such a rare experience to know that somebody knows what that's like. um,
Mhm.
and then the other part about this part when they fight Kelly and everything is that I thought it was very, I liked it that Rick put that scene in of Kelly using the idea of women being victims as a way to like trap him, that
Yeah.
she like acted like she was like this sad little victim, and
Mhm.
so that Paul of all people is the one that sees him and is like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then he has to run away, and I was like, yeah, I see what you're doing, sir, because Calypso's in this book. And so what I already see, I'm like, that's why I'm like, I like that you did that, because it's just kind of setting up a general narrative of what he's trying to do with kind of like the villains in a way, or just like the adversarial characters in this book are people who kind of manipulate more instead of it being like more like aggressive violence.
Mhm.
um, I think that maybe that's why he picked the Impusai as the villains in this part and have them come up throughout this book too, is
Yeah.
because they are like so that their literal power is just manipulating men. And so that is kind of like the general thing they're going for. But the note that I made was when they leave when they have to, of course, run away from the school
Yeah.
and they're outside. And one thing that I need to like make note of is people talk a lot about this scene where like Rachel wrote her number on his arm as if she's like as if it's some like against girl code sort of thing, I guess. I don't know what these things mean, but that's like how a lot of like the videos are about it, but it's like they suddenly ran into each other when they never thought they would ever see each other ever again.
Mhm.
They don't have any cell phones or anything like that because Percy doesn't have one. And so they don't have a way to like communicate. They don't even know where each other lives. Like one thing I appreciated was when she was like, "Did you think I just lived at the dam?" And Percy was like, "You know what? I know that sounds ridiculous, but I just pictured it that way because I do that."
Yeah.
With I feel like that's like an autistic thing, maybe it's an ADHD thing too, but
Yeah.
when I
Just
see
I
people in
didn't
like
think
a
past this situation.
yeah, like when I see people in like a certain place, I just like picture that they live around that area. I don't think about how they might be on vacation and live somewhere else. And so I
Yeah.
just picture them in this one place and they won't and I'm surprised when they pop up in a place where I don't expect them to be. Um but when they're out there, she does that because it's like we don't know if we're ever going to see each other again. You're the only person I've ever met that can see these things that I can see, and I want to ask you more questions about what these things are that I'm seeing all the time. And so I'm just going to write my number on your arm because there's no other way for me to ever like talk to you again because who
Mhm.
knows if this school is going to let you come back now that all of this stuff has happened.
Exactly.
um
Yeah.
but like the first my note is Annabeth's first words to him, "What did you do now?" And I was just like, oh my god. Like this is why I have such a hard time with her in this book because it's like if I said before we were talking about Becky that when I'm talking about Percy I'm actually talking about me most of the time. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the kind of stuff that like really gets to me is when people say like things like that because it's like what do you mean? Like this could never be his fault
Yeah.
in any realm of any universe. And it's like that whole thing where at the beginning of the story of the chapter Sally is talking about like implying that they're going on a date and Percy's like, no, it's just Annabeth, it's not anything. And it's like, okay. And I know that you're supposed to think that or whatever, but at the same time, if you remember the end of Titan's Curse, which was the last time we saw these characters before this, Annabeth was like all about saving Luke.
Yeah.
And so like why would he think that? Like this is always my thing with Percy is that like why would like I just the other day I saw a video of somebody saying like how could Percy mess everything up with Annabeth in this book? He's so terrible to her. And I'm like she's being groomed by Luke and is
Yeah.
treating him badly. She
She
is like
left she left twice and didn't tell him why. Like he said
yeah,
that. It's one of the few things that he says early on about her. And
yeah.
it's like so she's already being secretive. He just thinks that
Mhm.
this is them meeting up because they're about to go to camp together, so let's do something fun first, you know?
Yeah. And it's like she keeps defending Luke for many years after
Yeah.
she knows that he has tried to kill him many times. And so it's like why when the thing I like about this storyline with Annabeth, even though it's difficult, it is very like real to how this would happen. Is which is like thank you Becky for putting this into this book because I'm sure this came from you. Is because it's a girl, a female character. Is that when people are manipulating you and like abusing you and grooming you the way that Luke is, which is I remember is much worse in this book. Um,
Mhm.
you do things that are out of character and you treat people in your life in a way that they don't exactly deserve. Like the things that you're going through affect you are affected by that and you sometimes treat people in a not nice way. And you realize after it ends that you were doing that and you're like, "Oh, I feel really bad about how I was talking to this person and
Mhm.
treating them at the time." At the time, you were just like wrapped up in how you felt because you don't understand in the moment that you're treating somebody that doesn't deserve it that way. You're just like thinking about, I want these things and why won't this person give it to me? Because you can't see how the person in your life that's abusing you is affecting your behavior by how they're abusing you. And
Mhm.
so, whether it's difficult for people to read or not, that's very much the storyline with Percy and Annabeth in this book overall, is that she is being affected by what's going on with Luke. She is taking out the feelings that she has about Luke on Percy. Percy does not deserve that, but because she is doing that, that affects how he thinks about her, how he
Mhm.
thinks she feels about him, and how he just talks around her. And so it's like you can't expect him to just see that stuff happening and not and just like expect to somehow know through like mind reading abilities that she has like romantic feelings for him or feels more for him than she does for Luke or anybody else, when there's like really no indication for him anyway that that is true.
Mhm.
Because she's like, when somebody shows up and the first thing they say is like, "Oh, what did you mess up now?" That's not exactly somebody that you want to like confide in and tell them about all of your deepest darkest secrets. And so it feels like just it's very hard to think about how that thing happened and then they went to camp and the whole time they were going to camp she didn't speak to him the entire time. And he's trying to apologize to her because Rachel wrote her phone number on his arm, and it's like you shouldn't need to like justify that there is another person in the world that likes you, not
Mhm.
even in like a romantic way, that you just have somebody else that is like helping you, that literally helped save your life. Like he's trying to tell her she helped save my life and she still ices him out. And
Yeah,
it's like
like
that is just very harsh.
this whole conversation right here reads jealousy. Issa was on my live when I was reading it, and
Mhm.
like it reads jealousy because she goes, so you told her, and he's like, well, she can see through the mist, and she saw the monsters before I did. You told her the truth. Well, she recognized me from the Hoover Dam, so she's like, well, you saw her before, and it just keeps like escalating. And she keeps going more and more into this argument mode until she's finally like, she's kind of cute. And like,
Yeah, and it's like, what do you mean? That's not what he's thinking about at
yeah, because his
all.
next line is just like, I've never thought about that. And then he goes
No.
straight to, I'll deal with the school because he thinks that she's mad that he blew up another school.
Yeah, like he it's just one of those things of I this is one of those things with Percy where I feel like I am Percy in a way where like people are like putting like expecting you to have feelings or things like that for people. And it's like I am legitimately not thinking about that at all. What are you talking about? Like I'm not thinking about if I think Rachel is cute. I'm just thinking about how this random girl that I met when we were trying to find you is somehow here and I got attacked and my stepdad might hate me now,
Mhm.
because I started like his school on fire. Even though it wasn't me, he thinks that it was me. And
Yeah.
now I have to run off to camp and hide. And it's like she's mad because they can't go on like their date, but it's like you're punishing him because he's a demigod.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Like it could have happened to you at any point too. And it's just and it's one of those I feel like we're gonna sound like we hate Annabeth in this book. It's not that, but it's just that because the overabundance of like discussion about this in the fandom is like being on Annabeth's side and saying that Percy is like being a stupid boy and doesn't understand anything and blah blah blah. And it's like that's not like what's actually happening here though.
Yeah.
And so
His
since
feelings are coming from
that's
somewhere.
yeah, so that's not what people usually talk about. That's what we're gonna talk about to try to like say like it's more complicated than that. Annabeth isn't really giving him that much. Like they get to camp and she's not telling him about like the whole thing of her not telling him what's going on at camp. And like just going off to talk to Clarice and he's like, "Hello." And he's like, "Oh, thanks for like this conversation we had, I guess." And so it's like from the end of Titan's Curse, she went back to San Francisco a couple times that he didn't really know about. They went and searched for Nico a couple times in the spring, but they couldn't find him. But other than that, he doesn't know about
Yeah.
what's going on. And one of the things that people talk about with Rick's writing is that like he has Percy not know what's going on at camp so that people can explain it to him. And like whether that is what he's doing like writing narrative wise, it is still part of his characterization that Annabeth does not tell him what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and Grover does not tell him what's going on either. And so even if the author is using that as a way to like explain things to the audience, it's still part of like the story that these people are not telling him what's happening and he's having to figure it out by like piecing it together, or finding it out in like the most backwards way because people just like won't tell him. And that is like a very scapegoaty thing is I can't even count like how many times in my entire lifespan that I've like walked into a room and just felt weird because it just feels like people were talking about something before I got there and they just stop because I'm there somehow, and that they don't, and that everyone else seems to know what's going on except for me. That was like literally my entire life. It
Yeah.
was everywhere I went, including in my own family, feeling like they all somehow knew something that I didn't. And it's that's like what basically is happening with Percy. Because one thing with this I wanted to mention is they mentioned that there's like a dragon at the entrance of camp. That's one of the Demigod Diary stories. I
Mhm.
know that's one of the Demigod Diary short stories. I haven't read them. We'll probably read that book after we finish this one because those stories are kind of in between book 4 and 5. And then we can, like rage out about Luke for like 3 hours when reading like his diary
Yeah.
stories because they did say that they use that as like a way to write the flashbacks with all the end stuff for the show, so it will be
Yeah.
relevant.
That'll be good.
Yeah. And so either way will be interesting, but that's where that reference came from. In case you read that and were like, "Why the hell is there a dragon at the entrance of Camp Half Blood?" Where did that come from? That's where that came from. I just never read the short stories, and so I didn't remember that. I know what some of them are about now, so I know that that's in it. But the other thing too is that in the first book, like in the Lightning Thief book,
Mhm.
one of the things that happens before Percy ever leaves to go on his quest
Mhm.
is a hellhound attacks him
Yes.
and almost kills him when he's like a little tiny baby child.
Mm.
And it's one of the things he looks back at the end of the book when he realizes that Luke is the betrayer because he realizes that Luke let the hellhound into camp and was like trying to kill him before he even left to go on his quest.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just one of those things. So I just wanted to make that point to say that like in this part of the story when he goes into camp and then finds out in like the most upsetting way possible that there's a hellhound in camp, Annabeth could have told him about that. And she knew that he was attacked by one before, not only when he was at camp when he was little, but he references I was attacked by one of these when I was 12.
Mhm.
And so that's what he's talking about. They also obviously dealt with the hellhound like that in the underworld too. But like she could have mentioned that like, oh hey, by the way, there's a hellhound here. Don't get like freaked out by it. It's supposed to
Nice.
be here, but she just like doesn't mention it. And so he has a heart attack basically and thinks that like it somehow infiltrated camp and he has to like kill it before it hurts anybody. And it's just those like little things that it's like of just like not knowing what's going on. I forget. Do they say in this chapter that Chris Rodriguez like showed up?
No.
Okay, that's in like I read chapter 3 because I wasn't sure if we were going to read that one or not. That is
Yeah.
mentioned in the next chapter, and hey, hey, hey. But
Yeah.
either way, there's just the overall, I guess, feeling that is like a very scapegoaty feeling in this story so far um, that like Percy and Annabeth are just in this weird place, and it has nothing to do, literally nothing to do with what Percy is doing. It's like
Yeah.
nothing it to do with him at all. It's her responding to what Luke's doing. It's her upset about Luke being bad, and
Yeah.
she just takes it out on him. She doesn't know how to handle it, and and that's honestly, like I said before, it's a very accurate depiction of somebody going through something like that. You don't make the right choices all the time. You usually make all the wrong ones for a while, and especially when you're a teenager and you don't know what to do. that's the kind of stuff that happens, but it's worth it to like point out that this is like the dynamic that they're in.
Hmm.
And so it's so every time I see like a video or a post where somebody says like, "Oh, the first time they ever do anything, um, Percy spends 2 weeks with another girl," I'm like, "You are talking about Calypso. Do you understand what happened in this book?" That you're like saying like, "Oh, Percy like spent 2 weeks with another girl after doing something with Annabeth," and it's like, do you know, like, did you read that chapter where he's not allowed to leave and he doesn't understand that he can't leave because she doesn't tell him, and that he didn't want to be there, and that he almost died, and that the reason why they do something is because Annabeth thinks he's about to die?
Yeah.
Like, how is this, like, what is going on?
Yeah, so with okay, so the Hellhound belongs to, we find out, the new camp director slash like he's a sword coach. And so his name is Quintus. I was like, I don't remember Quintus in mythology. And so my brain, like the one Q one that like, I think it's Quirinus or something like that, is the god name for Romulus. And for some reason I was like, is that Romulus? Like, my brain was like, it sounds Roman. Why does it sound Roman? And it's not that he's Roman. And my hint is in this conversation. I'll just say, I won't say who the person is, because when I looked it up, I'm sure I spoiled something way down the line for myself that I forgot about. I mean, like, Labyrinth, yeah, okay, anyways. So, with, so he says something about there not being a camp like this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
camps didn't exist like this back when I was a demigod. And if he was Roman, that wouldn't make sense. So that should have been my hint. I won't say who he is, but don't look it up if you are reading along and don't know what I'm talking about.
And I didn't look it up. Whenever these things come, like, this is the hilarious thing about us rereading these books, to remind people, is that like she read them when she was in high school 'cause she's 6 years younger than me, and
Yeah, like
and
just graduated high
yeah,
school.
and like doesn't remember them that much just because you're young and we're doing a bunch of stuff. I don't remember them because I'm horribly traumatized. And when I read them, my dad was still alive, and yeah, for most of the time he was still alive. And I definitely had never gone to therapy before. And so my life for most of that time was generally kind of like this weird blur. And so reading a book series where the main character reminds me at every given single moment of his life, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I just like dissociated away that I generally do not remember. Like there's a lot of stuff I do not remember who he is.
I like,
I
yeah, I had no ideas of like guessing like anything that happened in this book. I can't remember any of it because like
mhm.
my brother asked. He was like, what happens in the next book? I was like, it's Battle of the Labyrinth, so like I'm not sure.
Elaborate.
There's a labyrinth, I'm sure, but I don't know where the labyrinth is, like in relation to the United States or the
Mhm.
world, the modern world. I don't know anything about like what's going on in it these days. So, yeah. But like looking at my notes, just like I scribbled a few of Heracle's tasks in here and something about Odysseus crying on the beach. So
Yeah.
it's like
and
it's
I
okay.
and I that's what I think is funny is that I generally don't remember who he is, and I know, and there's like a part of my brain that like tries to figure out or is like, should I look it up? And I'm like, no, I want to just like read the book and like re-remember as I'm reading it instead
Yeah.
of looking it up, because I don't want to remember the stuff that happens in these books before we reread them again if I don't remember, when there's a bunch of stuff that I know I don't remember. But one thing that's funny with me, because I did read these books before a bunch of times, and even if I don't remember everything, I remember I like when he showed up in the chapters, I was like, I hate you. And I was like, I have no idea why I hate you. I have absolutely no idea why I don't like you, but I just remember like a vivid anger towards him, and I was like, okay, so you do something that I really don't like in this book, but I have no idea what it is. And
Yeah.
that's like all that that's like when I'm reading these books, that's what happens is when a character pops up and I'm not sure about it, I'm like, oh, I have really strong feelings one way or another about them, but I don't remember why I feel that way at this moment of my life. I'll figure it out later when we read these books again. But just to
Yeah.
start off, that character having like creepy, weird things that he won't show anybody, and having a hellhound as a
Yeah. It's
pet
all weird.
is just like, who are you, sir?
Yeah.
Um, and other than after that, the thing I remember that I made a note about was um, Percy learning that having a support system is helpful, which is also something that I've learned. Like last week, I had my wisdom teeth out, and usually when like things like that happen, I like don't even ask people for help because I just assume they're not going to want to help me, and I just figure everything out on my own, and that's always interesting because I'm trying to do everything on my own. Obviously, when you have like a health thing going on, you doing everything on your own means that everything is done kind of like halfway done because it's you doing it. And but this time, I told my mom about it, and she helped me. She brought me to the appointment, and then when I was at the appointment and I had the most autistic moment of my life and didn't bring the medication because I thought that I didn't need to. Don't ask why, it just happened. And so they started doing everything like over an hour late. She had to run and go get the medication from the pharmacy and bring it back before we could start. And I asked them if I could like talk to her before they did anything. And so I just like talked to her, and she just like, would help me like calm down more than it already was, and just like reassured me that you'll be fine when you wake up, no matter how out of it you are. I'll make sure that you're okay. You can stay at our house as long as you want. And she bought me like a ton of food, of stuff that I could eat, so I didn't have to do that. She picked up my medications that they got me and brought them to me. Like she brought the last one over to me today, and it was just like, and this past weekend I was like, wow, it's a lot easier to recover from things when you have other people that are like helping you and supporting you so that you don't have to do everything yourself. And I was like, thank you for helping me because this was so much easier than it usually is because I didn't have to figure all this stuff out myself. You just did everything for me, and I just got to like relax basically for 5 days instead of doing all that stuff. And so the Percy version of that in this chapter is when he's worried about cabin stuff, that he's worried that they're going to go into his cabin and it's going to be all messy and he's going to have to clean all of the dishes and stuff. And then he walks in and Tyson's in there. Um,
Yeah, Tyson was an unexpected surprise, but hold on. We skipped over the Cloven Elders.
oh,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, so Cloven Elders. So what we learned is another secret was Grover's in trouble. And Grover's in trouble because he told the Cloven Elders, which includes Silenus, is just kind of a satyr you hear about a lot in mythology, but I can't think of a single story to attribute to him.
yeah.
I think he's somewhat prophetic, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
But regardless, we find out Grover told the elders that he's been hearing Pan. And they're like, okay, we've been letting you seek for 6 months. What's going on here? Like, stop telling us this if you're not actually going to have Pan in front of us. And Chiron and Percy come into this. Percy finds out, first of all, that, like, Grover has a girlfriend that nobody told him about. And they're all standing there quaking. Annabeth and Clarice are working together for some reason still, and it has to do with Grover, and nobody told him any of this is going on. So he's just thrown into the middle of it. Grover is clearly in trouble, about to lose his seeker's license, which is his thing. Like, he knows how much it means to him. And luckily Chiron's able to, like, last minute somehow convince them. We don't know what he says to them, but he says something and they're like, I guess we'll give you a week. And like, Grover's like, that's impossible, but we find out they have a week, and that Clarice, on some sort of scouting mission, found something that she thinks is of relevance, but nobody else does.
Hmm. One thing I will say about that, just about the TV show, is that she goes on a scouting mission about the labyrinth,
Mhm.
and during Titan's Curse, and it makes me wonder if they'll show in the TV show if they'll be able to have the time to show us any of that, so that because otherwise, Dior won't be in that season at all,
Yeah, that's weird.
unless they put scenes of that in or somehow have other scenes
Well,
make
I
up
mean,
other scenes.
she was only in a couple episodes when you think about it of the first season.
Yeah. And so I was that just was one of those things that I thought out of the back of my mind, like I wonder if they're going to show her going on that mission thing, and especially cuz it does involve Chris Rodriguez as part of that. And so that would be a way for them to have like a storyline, because they likely are going to do some of that, of them having a storyline in some way in Sea of Monsters and stuff, because they're going to run into each other likely when he's on Luke's side. Like
Yeah.
yeah, anyway. And so that would be a good way for them to kind of have that
Interesting.
happening consistently in every season. Um, from at least from season 2 on, with the two of them having something going on.
Yeah.
Um, but either way, it's yeah, it's just one of those things that all of this stuff is going on with Grover, and he has no idea what's going on because, like I said before, it's just this overall theme with him that everyone is talking about all this stuff as if he's supposed to know, and they get
Mhm.
like upset with him because he doesn't know what's going on, and it's like,
Wow.
you didn't tell me, so
How is
why,
it
how am I
supposed
supposed to know? So many things like that have happened in my life. It's disgusting how many times that has happened to me in my life, where people will just be talking about something as if I'm supposed to know, and I'm like, when was I supposed to know if you never told me that this ever happened?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So to skip back to Tyson, that is after he walks out of this. So he walks out of the situation where everything's awful, finds out that there's an inspection, and is freaking out because he doesn't remember the state that he left the cabin in last time.
Hmm.
Which from the sounds of it was like literally when he left for the mission for Titan's Curse,
Yeah.
like leaving everything behind. And so he comes in, sees Tyson has not only cleaned everything, but decorated. Like Tyson made it beautiful. And so Selena, or Selena, I don't know why I always want to say it weird, but Selena, who is the inspector of this and a daughter of Aphrodite, so probably high standards, is like, oh yeah, this is great, and it's kind of a quick interaction, but her already being mentioned twice, like I know she turns out to be the mole, but they're setting it up by having her mentioned more frequently. I'm finding.
Yeah, some of that stuff is not, it's not completely like obviously revealed in this book, but she is around more in this book to lead up to the things that happen in the next book. Um and other stuff that happens in this book, honestly, with camp. But yeah, I that was the part where I was like, yeah, this is Percy learning how nice it is to have a support system like I have, where he doesn't have to clean up the cabin. Everything looks really nice and everything's good because Tyson loves him
Yeah,
and treats him very nicely. Like, this is why I have undying like
yeah,
love
he's
for
so sweet and
Tyson,
so
because he's so
pure.
sweet. He just like shows up and he's like, "Hi, can you tell me what's going on?" Like, the thing that I love about Tyson always with Percy is that he's like this one person that he can always go to and tell him about what's going on. And like, he does like want to protect him a little bit, where he doesn't want him to be upset necessarily, but he also will tell him the things that are going on that he doesn't tell other people, because he trusts that he can talk to Tyson about this stuff without him judging him or, telling anyone else or anything. He's like this person that he can just go to with these things and kind of figure out how he feels about stuff. That's what he did with him, and the bit that he was in the beginning of Titan's Curse was the same sort of way, where he was telling Tyson about some of the stuff that was going on in that book, and I'm pretty sure at the end of the book too. And Tyson is just kind of there as like a nice, just somebody who's always there to support him.
Yeah.
And so one of the notes I wrote down is that like Percy is keeping so many secrets from so many people.
Mhm.
Tyson knows some of them now, but like his there's this stuff going on, like nobody else knows about who Rachel is. Nobody, I don't even think anyone even knows that the thing with Rachel even happened in the dam, because it's not like he had time to tell them about it. um and then like Chiron and the rest of camp don't know about Nico.
Mhm.
They don't, they talk about there's like a crack in the floor because of when Nico did that. um but like nobody else knows where Nico is. They don't know that he's a child of Hades and wants to kill Percy, and they don't know anything about him. They just know that he's gone.
Yeah.
And so it's like everyone, he's keeping that secret from everyone else at camp besides Grover and Annabeth. And there's just like layers upon layers of things that he like can't tell anybody about because he's trying to like juggle all of these different things at the same time. And so it's always nice when he can talk to Tyson and just tell him like what happened.
Yeah.
And he just like gives him support that like, you'll be able to figure this out. Or I'm sorry that that happened. And especially with the stuff with Nico. Um Tyson would be a person that would like literally cry if Percy tried to be like, yeah, what happened with Nico is my fault.
Yeah.
He would literally like sob if he tried to say that. And so he can't say that to Tyson and doesn't do that when he's explaining what happened. But it's just one of those, it's just always nice to have those scenes with him. Um, and then the, what am I saying? Oh, and then of course, like the ending scene for the chapter is when um, it's not a dream. He just like gets like a iris message from somebody. I
Mhm.
genuinely don't remember who is sending him those.
Yeah, we just kind
um,
of know that like it's the iris message is facing Nico. Nico doesn't seem to know it's happening.
mm-mm.
And so like that puts a big question mark over okay, well who sent it? And they sent it collect, which Percy was like, I didn't even know this was a thing because there's a voice now saying give me a drachma.
Yeah. And it's just little baby 11-year-old Nico by himself trying to like start a fire by a river.
Mhm.
Percy figures out as it goes on that he is by the river Styx in the
Yeah.
underworld, and that there's like the absolute worst person with him that is like a ghost person that is trying to convince him, basically like talking up all of the like worst sort of decisions that you would want Nico to make. Like he's like, yeah, let's get revenge. Like
Yeah, so
let's,
what we find out is that Nico has been trying to figure out a way to get Bianca back.
yeah.
And this ghost is telling him a soul for a soul is the only thing that actually works. And Nico's been against this, we find out. Like, Nico's been telling him, no, I won't do that. There has to be another way. And we've finally gotten to the point where Nico has tried everything he could think of. And so this ghost telling him a soul for a soul, it has to be vengeance. Like, that's the kind of thing your dad would respect. Of course, Percy's like, okay, this kid thinks that I killed his sister, so
He's gonna come
he's
after
coming for
me.
me. Yeah.
And that's like what he wants. He wants Nico to come after him so that, and he wants Luke to come after him,
Mhm.
so that they don't go after anyone else. Um, and it's just the first thing I thought of during this part is I was like, Hades, fuck you. Like, fuck you that your child is in the underworld and that you have to know that your other child died and that you're just like leaving him out there by himself. You're not doing anything to help him because you're afraid of your brothers and
Like,
what they
not even
would,
letting Bianca's shade go to him.
and like you're literally just afraid because everyone's going to find out that you kept these children secret. And so instead of having to tell people that you kept these children secret all these years, you're instead of leaving him out there to suffer. Like, I know that Hades is one of the nicer gods in general, um, with
This is
like
still a
his
dick move.
with
Yeah.
his kids, but this is horrible. Nico is 11 and you're just leaving him out there by himself while this spirit thing is, it's once again like, it's so funny to me that people think that there isn't any grooming in this book series when there's three different grooming plots happening in this one book.
Mhm.
Like there's Luke and Annabeth, Luke and Selena, and Nico and this thing. That because that's very obviously somebody grooming him to make bad choices
Yeah.
and to go after people that he wants just to him to go after to use him to get rid of whoever to get rid of Percy because that's who he's going after. And the chapter basically ends with Percy realizing that knowing that who they're talking about him getting revenge on is him.
Mhm.
And he's just like, okay. Like he wants to like hear what's going on and everything and he
Yeah.
knows where Nico is now at least, or at least at a time where he was. He doesn't know what's going on still, but that's like where it ends of just like Nico is out there somewhere wanting to kill him still and genuinely now like trying to plan to do it because somebody is um doing that. And I will say like there are like little things from this book that I remember and
Mhm.
I might actually lose my mind reading it now with like actual like memory and not like dissociating away from everything that makes me uncomfortable because this I remember this storyline with Nico and it is horrifying from what I even remember. Not, and that doesn't even count the stuff with Luke um, talking about Nico. And so it's that stuff is bad enough from what I remember that I'm like, oh god, what is this gonna be like with watching these things happen and like having to watch it through the eyes of somebody like Percy who thinks that he is at fault for these things.
Mhm.
And so when Nico comes after him, he's not like, you're in the wrong for doing this. It's like, I don't want to die, but he doesn't exactly think that he's necessarily wrong about that either.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just really hard to read that from his perspective of somebody that's like, yeah, it is my fault that your sister died. So if you want to stab me, I guess you can do that. That sort of like of a perspective, you're just like, oh my god. If it was any other character, they would be like, it's not my fault that your sister died this way. And it's just like a sad thing that little Nico is like so sure that if he like is able to bring Bianca that he could just somehow fix everything by bringing Bianca back or that she would still be there and obviously she's my sister and she loves me so she'll be there and it's like Bianca abandoned him before she ever even died.
Well, and we find out it's gone so far because, like, when the ghost thing says a soul for a soul, he's like, I tried that, or I suggested that, and he's like, it can't be yours. Like, your dad's not going to take your soul. And so we find out Nico was willing to exchange his own life for Bianca's.
Mhm. And it's just he's willing to do that while Bianca took the
Left
like the
him.
first chance she got basically to like go off on her own and leave him behind.
Even she
Um
did regret it, but yeah,
yeah.
like, and she was a child, and but like, yeah, it's really sad to watch him go through this, and like, speaking from like now having a child who's this age, an emo 11-year-old really does stick out, like they really do. Because they're still babies, like they're still at the point where it's like, do you even have problems? You barely even have underarm pubes, like.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, well, the last podcast we were talking about the scapegoat golden child roles, but like, if there is like another family role is a lost child,
Mhm.
which is kind of the one that gets like lost in the shuffle, where like they are more like majorly neglected, as opposed to like the different sorts of abuse that like the golden child and the scapegoat do. But Nico is literally a lost child. Like
Mhm.
he's literally lost right now
Yeah.
in this story. They don't know where he is. Even when he's okay, he doesn't really stay at camp that much. And so he's just that person that is just there's other crazy things happening. He somehow gets like lost in the middle of it all and ends up in these bad situations probably because people just don't realize when he's gone because he's not around at camp enough for people to realize when he's missing because he's never at camp enough where they would notice him being gone in that same sort of a way.
Well,
Like,
I mean, he was at camp for that one winter, right? Like
mm-hmm.
not even a month probably.
No, it was like a
And
week. It was like a
yeah,
week that they were on the quest
only
for Titan's curse.
literally there a week.
And during that time, probably didn't really talk to many people because all of the people that he met that brought him there left, and
Yeah.
like his sister. So yeah, nobody knows him. The counselors didn't want to look like Mr. D and Chiron turned down looking for him. They were like, "This just happens sometimes. Oh well."
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, he's so forgotten here. A lot of like when it's like more sitcom-y dysfunctional family, they'll put the middle child in this role a lot of the times. That's like a more realistic version of just like you get forgotten because you're just not
Hmm.
visible in your role. But that's essentially like as a demigod, he's getting forgotten because they don't know who his parent is. He didn't make any friends while he was there for a week, and like, oh well, we just lost another one, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, he's just kind of like the fact that Chiron just like accepts what they say about him, that he just like ran off and he doesn't question that anymore. It's just like he just wasn't even really thinking about him very much. And like in the Heroes of Olympus books, people realize that Percy was abducted as soon as it happens because they know that he would be there, that
Mm-hmm.
he would be at camp, he would tell them where he was going, he wouldn't just disappear and not tell anybody where he was. Like one of the things that I read like a fan fiction once, where a character was trying to like make Annabeth feel like question like that Percy would like leave not because he was taken but because he wanted to leave sort of thing. And it was like when I was reading that fan fiction I was like laughing when I was reading it cuz I'm like she will never believe that. And that's the literal story of that fan fiction is her pretending like she believes that so she can manipulate the person into giving her what she wants to keep
Mm-hmm.
looking for him because there's not even one part of her that is worried that he left and it just isn't going to find her because she knows that he would never do that to her. But like with Nico, like when something happens to him, he's not around enough for people to even notice that something has gone wrong. It reminds me. So this is a super duper '90s moment. You might not even remember this, but because I was young when this episode of TV aired, but it was on the show Party of Five, which was a show in like the early to like mid 90s. And it was about a family that a bunch, five like kids ranging from like the early 20s to the youngest one was, I think, like 10 or 11, something like that. And their
Mm-hmm.
parents die. And so then all the siblings are trying to, like, basically, the older ones have to try to raise the younger ones. And that's the basic concept of the show. And so the youngest, there's this whole episode where the youngest daughter, who's played by the girl who is in Mean Girls,
Mm-hmm.
who is like the girl with like brown hair that's like the friend that says like some of the
Oh
funniest
yeah.
lines. That's it's her, that actress when she was a young kid. And so she's the youngest sibling of this family. And they have this entire episode where none of them know where she is. And so they're all like panicking, thinking that she ran away, that she got lost, somebody hurt her, she's hurt somewhere, whatever. And they go on this whole panic. They like call the police and all this stuff, like reporter is missing. And then like the next morning she just like walks in and is like, "Hey guys, she slept over at a friend's house."
Mm-hmm.
And none of the kids, like the older kids in the family, legitimately just like forgot. And like in the beginning of the episode, you see her leaving. Like she told them all that she was sleeping over at her friend's house, and they all forgot and thought that, and had the police out looking for her because they just forgot about her in that way. They didn't listen to what she was saying, and it turns into it's a whole storyline in that, where they have to like prove that they can take care of her because they just forgot where she was when she told them where she was going. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
not like they didn't know, they just didn't remember. And like that's the kind of stuff that happens a lot with Nico is that he just people just like don't think about him like that. Um and for many books at least, they just don't. And he just is kind of this like weird afterthought in a lot of way for a lot of like the powerful people in this world. Um and you
Yeah.
just like want him to get help. It's just like so painful.
And
reading
you
this
know,
stuff.
like if the trio let the secret slip, that people would be looking for, like people would take
Yeah.
it seriously, but it'd be for the wrong reason. And at the same time, I do understand like Percy's reason, at least big, that the more people know that he's a Hades child, the more danger he's in.
Yeah, and it is that's one of the things with I really like the storyline that Rick does with Nico and Percy overall, but it is I really like that storyline because Percy is someone who understands that like Nico is just really hurt right now and he knows he just needs like kind of like a source for all of that like those feelings and he is the source.
Mm-hmm.
And he's okay with it
Yeah.
because he's like a scapegoat and he's like, okay, I know that this kid is in a lot of pain, and so I'm just gonna like let him use me this way because I don't know what else to do. And like I feel like that storyline is one where when you read it when you're older, you like understand if you read it when you were very young, you would understand more of what like Percy's really doing there is that he understands that like Nico is really hurt and that he's just in a lot of pain and he's like acting out and angry at him and taking that stuff out on him because he's just going through horrible trauma and he just like is kind of like sticking it out with him long enough hoping that if he does that that Nico will realize that he's somebody that he can trust that he can help him that he's a good person and he just kind of hopes that he can like make it that they can make it through all of that stuff without it going too badly or Nico doing anything that would like cause any like real damage with anybody in this world. And so he just keeps it a secret of like what happened with him as long as he possibly can and a bunch of other stuff with him too because he just wants to help him and I feel like if you're a younger person who read those books you might like feel like Percy is ignoring Nico or like Percy doesn't care enough about Nico or like or think that Nico has every right to be really angry at him but it's one of those things that when you grow up you it's just something that happens when you grow up is that you see people that remind you of you when you were younger and even if they're upset with you or like angry at you or have feelings towards you or whatever you can kind of see it happening and you just kind of let them because you just know that they're going through a hard time and you're just hoping that you're just trying to like make it last until that time is over and you can like come back around and talk to them again.
Yeah.
um, and that's very much what it's very interesting to even imagine seeing this sort of thing on the TV show, um, because it is like a very like complex sort of thing but that is what Percy is doing with Nico in the next two books especially this one is he's trying to help him without Nico realizing that he's trying to help him, because he knows that if he does find out that he might not want it but it's like but I want to help I'm not just going to leave this kid like just alone like this. I'm going to try to help him even if nobody else can or will. I'm going to at least try and it doesn't go well all the time but he tries and
Mm-hmm.
that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah.
um
And Percy does it in his own way. Like
mhm.
it's it's not perfect, but it's very much coming from a place of empathy of like I
Mhm.
what would I have wanted, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's just that Nico is so little
Yeah,
that it's
maybe.
he's such a little baby that you just like want to just like protect him somehow, um or just like stop this craziness from happening to him any further even though that does not happen.
Yeah, so I that's probably a good place to stop because I'm guessing what happens is Percy's gonna figure out how what he has to do next after receiving this Iris message. Like there's gonna be some sort of action. I know a volcano was even mentioned in the Iris message. So
Oh God.
yeah.
That's not at least for a little while. But yeah, they do set up like the next I read the next chapter and so I don't know what happened in the other two after that, but I can say that they do like set up like the general kind of storyline when it comes to Luke
Mhm.
and in by the end of the next chapter that is scary
Okay.
like I vaguely remember it but the fact that I don't remember it very much means that it's very upsetting
I mean,
because
we're
I
going to the underworld for this one, so I'm
because
guessing. So
yeah because I don't remember what it is, and or I don't remember as much about what happens when it happens. So that means that it's really bad, because I blocked out all the stuff that is upsetting. Like I don't remember any of the House of Hades book, for example, because that whole book is so upsetting.
Okay. So
So,
something big is happening.
mm-hmm.
You ever had like one of those lessons about tragic heroes where they're like, oh, the missing of the mark and the fatal flaw and all of that comes from Aristotle's Poetics. And I was like, I know I have a copy somewhere. The copy that I have in Greek. So I was like, shit. Of course I only have it in Greek.
That's not
gonna work.
It's not gonna work for right now. If I had like a few weeks, maybe. But this one is not going to be a heavily researched pod. This is going to be us talking about like mostly the literature aspects of things that we read, because our big research pod is coming up. We have a Calypso pod coming up that we both intend to go very hard on. And so I'm trying not to go as hard on this one. It's more just a thought that we had and that somebody had asked us about in the comments. So why don't we get started with the hero stuff, because I just read the Aristotle and I need to get it out of my head. Because this is like the funny thing. You know how people always get on us about like, oh, that's a lot later than the mythology stuff, so you can't take that into account. Aristotle's a lot later. And so when people start saying, oh, a hero has to be exactly like Aristotle's model of a tragic hero, no, they don't. He's looking at Homer and he's looking at like all of these epics that we talk about in order to inform what he thinks makes those things good or not. So when it comes to a hero, really it seems like the only qualification in Greek mythology is they have to be very, very great at something, whether that be because they are a demigod, a child of a god and a human, or because they just happen to be extremely favored by a god, which like even Agamemnon counts in that. Agamemnon, I believe, has Hera's favor, which is also probably why he sucks. I mean, like, yeah, it makes sense that they go together, right? So, other than that, the only things we see repeated are that these heroes are very, very human. What Aristotle likes about heroes is he likes ones that are good, that have some sort of moral purpose behind what they're doing, but they can't be too on the extreme of good or bad. If they're on the extreme of either when they start out, like say you have a hero that starts out, he's great, he's very virtuous, he's very prosperous, and you watch his decline, like, yes, you get that emotional, like, release of watching somebody fail, but you're missing all of the other emotions at the same time. So he needs to be an ordinary person, he needs to be a consistent person, and he needs to be realistic. And I think that that's the part that gets sticky for people like us who read this and think, like, is this person truly a hero if they do all of these not noble things? And that's because people like us bring that more modern sense of, we do expect a hero to, like, yes, they have a moral purpose, but that moral purpose is usually serving humanity. It's not necessarily serving the gods or serving, like some sort of function that's just for themselves. It's usually a higher calling than that. Look at Achilles, like somebody fighting somebody in power, because like, even though you could argue who has more power, him or Agamemnon, right? Because whereas he's a demigod, Agamemnon is the literal leader. And so we do have a bit of that there, but you're supposed to be looking at Achilles standing up to Agamemnon like, oh, come on. Like, why are we doing this, you know? So at the same time, it's like, I mean, we have those stories, but they don't exactly resolve the way we would want them to. So more what I wanted to do than go through Aristotle, because this is one of my blind spots I have to restudy every time that it happens. I wanted to talk about the different heroes, and there's 3 that I would call the main ones, and I'm bringing in a Roman one. I'm saying it now so nobody can call me on it. We're going to talk Achilles, Odysseus, and Aeneas. And I'll start with Achilles because we just read about a version of Achilles, and so Achilles is very fresh in our minds. When it comes to Achilles as a hero, clearly he is a demigod. Like that is the function that makes him a hero. He's a demigod, and he has this like super speed and agility. And because of this, he gets that prophecy of greatness. You know, that like you're either going to die an old man alone on your farm and nobody's going to know who you are, or you get to be so great that your name's going to be spoken for centuries later. And what we're supposed to be seeing in the Iliad, I don't know that we see it in Song of Achilles as much, is him grappling with that choice. Because him saying, I'm not going to fight, is him saying, you know what, I think I kind of want to be immortal if, like, this is what fighting means. And it's funny because while he's in that angry state, we use the word for wrath that's used for the wrath of the gods, Manen. Like, Manen's the accusative form, I forget. I think it's Manus is the nominative form for my classicists out there. But the word wrath only used for divinity. And then once that wrath is soothed, it's kind of funny because that's when he's already rejoined the battle. He's already made his decision to have this long, glorious life. But that god sense of him gets soothed when he gives Hector back to Priam. And so the duality between man and god kind of ends at the end of the Iliad with him returning the body, saying, you can have your 11 days for a funeral. And so what's supposed to be interesting about the Achilles of the Iliad is all of that duality. We got man and god, we got anger versus, you know, like not anger, we got death and life, all of those things playing together. And so, yeah, Achilles isn't the kind of guy where you'd be like, I want to be just like him, I want to do all the things that he did. But he is the kind of guy where you look at him and you're like, well, what would I do faced with these choices? What would I think if I was in this situation? You know, like, could I let go of the anger of an insult long enough to do something that I think I'm supposed to do? That's the lesson of Achilles, I think. And in these epics, it's kind of like a longer tragedy in a sense, because like the heroes go up and down episodically throughout these epic poems. And some of them have much more tragic ends, some of them have happier ends. And the epic poems usually tend to focus on a point in time. I think we're supposed to like Achilles at the end of it. We're supposed to think like, okay, he's supposed to go on his way and do what he needs to do now. But at the same time, like, we had to see that very human moment of him to get there. To be like, okay, you know, can you actually get to this point of earning that kleos without going through so much struggle? I mean, that's like why we love them. It's because they're interesting. You know, a character, and this was Aristotle's whole argument, a character who is all good all the time, that's so fucking boring. Nobody wants to read that. Nobody wants to listen to that. Nobody wants to watch that play. We want to watch the one where we go through the full range of human emotions, where we feel scared, happy, sad, angry, all of the things. And the gods tend to do that to us for some reason. And I mean, this just goes overall with literature. Fiction is a safe way to explore concepts in the human world. And so we apply them to these bigger, larger than life people and characters. Certainly they can apply to ourselves on a smaller scale. We may not be as big as Achilles, but at the same time, we've all been so angry that we don't want to let something go. And maybe letting that thing go is the thing that's going to free ourselves, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So Achilles is a good example because he is not any one thing. You can't pin him down as totally good. You can't pin him down as totally bad. His actions are kind of all over the place. The part where he gets more human, like you said, is where he gets friendlier and nicer, because part of what he's going through in that moment with Priam is he's seeing a dad cry over his dead son, realizing I'm going to be a dead son someday. This could be my dad. And realizing probably within that as well, I have done this to many fathers. I have made this happen a lot. And this doesn't feel great in my face, you know?
So we went through Achilles. Odysseus would probably be a good next start. So Odysseus is a lot less tragic than Achilles because like most of us don't know how he died. I'm pretty sure he died sailing off the end of the world. Like I'm pretty sure it was a flat earther. Man just kept exploring and then sailed right off. Um, but with Odysseus, like clearly, you know, the adjective that's used for him most often is wily. He has that like cunning, clever intelligence that both gets him into trouble and gets him out of trouble. And I feel like in the Odyssey, we both see that intelligence, the overthinking take over, and like that causes the situation sometimes. Whereas other times we see it like, oh, it actually gets them out of them. Like telling Polyphemus his name was nobody. Who knew that would pay off later, right?
Hmm.
So with Odysseus, he's a lot more up and down than Achilles is. Like he's clearly a lot more good if we're just looking at his epic. It's once we get out of his specific epic that we start seeing like maybe Odysseus isn't the greatest guy because the Greeks don't like him. They know that because he's tricky with his words, he's gonna lie to them. He's going to like trick them somehow. So none of them trust him. And then when it comes to like how he got Achilles' armor, it was a contest between him and Ajax, the strongest Greek fighter, like most kills on the battlefield Greek fighter. And because the Trojan prisoners that they have, at least in the version that I'm thinking of, they had some Trojan prisoners. They were like, "Can you guys help us decide? Because we don't want to decide who wins this contest." The Trojan prisoners were all like, "We're the most afraid of Odysseus, so he wins." And like that's who Odysseus is. He's going to trick you. He's going to lie to you. He's going to twist his words and play word games. And while we love him as an audience for it, we can clearly see, at least outside of his epics, that nobody else does. Nobody else likes him for it. And the only point we see it within the Odyssey is when he goes to the underworld, because that's where Ajax, the greater, sees him and just fucking turns around. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not talking to you. I'm not giving you anything. Fuck you."
I will say that one thing that Madeline Miller did like correctly was
Mhm.
when Patroclus is like listening to Odysseus and when he's trying to convince Achilles to fight and he's like talking about he has a wife at home that he hasn't seen and Patroclus is like I might believe him that he has a wife but I'm honestly not sure that I believe that he does. And I was like, "Oh my God. How
Yeah.
much does this guy lie that they're not even sure that Penelope is real?"
Like if she wasn't related to Helen, I feel like that would probably actually be a thing that happened because I think she's like a distant cousin of Helen's or something,
Hmm.
which is why Odysseus worked out marrying her when he was at the like whole picking out a suitor for Helen thing. So most of those men know Penelope is real. Um, it makes sense that Patroclus wouldn't, though, actually, now that I think about it, because he was a kid. So, and in her version, especially. But yeah, like, anyways, going back to Odysseus, he's much more a hero than we tend to think. So, shifting from Achilles, somebody who is angry, seems selfish to us, all of that, to Odysseus, we're getting a little closer, right? At least we know his moral purpose is I want to get home to my family. Like that is the driving force in his epic is I want to get home to my family. And everything that happens outside of that is just, the mishaps along the way. So he's not tragic. He has a tragic flaw, even if he's not tragic. And he's he's more well-rounded than Achilles, but still not quite there. Because again, like we see that intelligence play in such bad ways sometimes too.
Hmm.
Yeah, so then we're going to move to Aeneas. and Aeneas is Roman. Aeneas is basically Virgil's response to the larger epics of like, okay, we got to do a Roman one, right? So Aeneas, we've heard a little bit of him in Song of Achilles. He is a son of Venus, Aphrodite, and an old man named Anchises. And so when Troy's getting sacked, he's able to escape with a crew of men. I believe they probably only have one ship of men. It's like such little survivors. He takes his dad. There's like a pillar of salt moment because his wife isn't supposed to look back at the wreckage and then she dies. And he has a son with him. And so his epic, it's basically it's like the primordial Rome story because he goes from being a Trojan soldier who is like very highly regarded. He's named in the Iliad multiple times and has some prominent battles in it. And then he sails off, and just like Odysseus, he gets stuck somewhere. That is the one bad thing that happens to him where we can question his character because, other than that, this man, the word used to describe him most is pious. And it's not pious in the way that we think of pious, pietas in like Latin. It's knowing your place in society. It is knowing where you stand amongst the gods and amongst other humans. So I've explained this to Shannon before, but like just for pod purposes, it's like the umbrella of authority in Christianity if it worked better. Like it is the idea that there is divinity over you, and then you have your master of the house, and then you have children and servants and all of that. And if everybody acts according to their station and they protect the people underneath them, we have a perfect system, right? So Aeneas is meant to embody that. He's meant to be the proto-Roman. And so we have him taking care of his aging father, who eventually dies on the journey. We have him, he does leave with the wife. The one romance he falls in love with, they used, because Romans love to do this shit, to like basically explain their one rivalry with Carthage. So Carthage was a city that they completely sacked, like took the dirt off of the ground and put it into the ocean, sacked. And the reason for the rivalry, apparently, is Aeneas spent 6 years in Carthage. And the way he was able to stay there, Venus wanted to protect him. She didn't want him to get hurt. So she made the queen of Carthage fall in love with him. And the queen of Carthage is a widow. She had vowed she was never going to marry again. She was allowed to be this ruler, super badass lady. But because Aphrodite made her fall so deep, basically when the gods are like, hey, Aeneas, you gotta leave, like you gotta go to Italy because you're going to found a race there, you're going to start what's going to be the best society ever, like you have to go. And so when Dido finds out that he is going to leave, she just completely breaks down, builds a funeral pyre, puts herself on top of it, and like immolates herself. And so to give, yeah, I know, to give Achilles, or sorry, why do I keep saying the wrong name? To give Aeneas a moment similar to Odysseus in the underworld, his underworld moment is Dido is the one who turns away from him and like goes back to her husband. Yeah, but that's like the one bad thing you could say about Aeneas the entire time. He is a great husband. He is a great leader. He is great to the gods. And so, like, Hera is his number one hater in that, but only because he's a Trojan. It's not even because he's him, you know? She's just like, this Trojan can't survive.
I know we were talking about this before, but we were saying that, and now I'm like, because Rick Riordan is who he is as a person, I'm like, did you do this on purpose? To have Percy be like Aeneas because the grudge against Hera is astounding. Like that's actually one of the things in Battle of the Labyrinth that comes up is where some of that like dying, burning hatred comes from
Yeah.
on both sides. And so, and then also Odysseus is definitely like Annabeth.
Hmm.
who thinks way too much and doesn't notice things that seem obvious to everybody else because she's like thinking too much and thinking that she can like this person just doesn't understand what's going on when they actually do. Um, and then Achilles is definitely Clarice. Oh my God. So like
Yes.
that's all I'm gonna say about that. But uh yeah. And so when you're talking about the umbrella of like power, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe that,
Hmm.
I told you this, but I'll say it again for this. Like, I definitely understand why men are obsessed with the Roman Empire because especially American, but really like any colonizing country, really, I understand why they do because the idea that like everyone just like knows their place and they like don't try to change where they're from and everyone takes care of everybody is like what every colonizing country wants to believe they are, but none of them actually are. And so
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of men particularly are obsessed with the Roman Empire because they want to like find where they don't act like that. It's
Yeah.
like people don't do that. Like you're not just like born and just like are fine with like the place that you're in. Like I don't want to be poor my entire life just because I was born to people that were really poor. Like why would I want to do that? Why would I want to stay there just because it's my place? Like no, fuck you. Like
Yeah.
but it's like that you can't like decide where you're like where you're supposed to stay in life just dependent on who you're like genetically, you know, attached to, I guess is the best way to put it. But it's just I'm like okay, now I understand where that weird fixation came from.
Okay. We're gonna mute you.
Oh boy.
Sorry. Anyways, yeah, so I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. That was distracting. Just I've never seen that succession of emojis. Anyways, um, yeah, so dude bros in Roman society and Roman history, going back to that idea, I think a lot of them wouldn't acknowledge that certain things that took place there would not happen in their version of this, because we have instances in Roman society of slaves being so beloved by their masters that they get freed in their wills and get like portions of inheritance and stuff. Nobody's doing that, you know. Like nobody's really doing that. It's like the best of the best people. But see, in a system like Rome, where everybody's afraid of the gods, everybody's afraid that if they piss the gods off enough, it's not only going to be the ruin of themselves, but their entire country, then like people do fall in line with things like that. Nobody fears God and the umbrella of authority enough to take it seriously these days.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'm not
Yeah.
even sure that they did completely back then either.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's easy to kind of like sanitize how things actually were.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah,
don't
but
think that Rome would have fallen as spectacularly as it did if it was actually working like that.
well, and it has to do with power. You know, like
Hmm.
men get too much power. We see what happens. It's literally happening in our faces right now. You give power to the wrong men, bad things are going to happen.
Yes, especially if they don't know how to use Signal.
Just yeah. But to go back to Aeneas for a second, so Aeneas was written specifically to be a Roman, like, we are so much better than the Greeks, because unlike Odysseus, who goes on the same journey almost, you know, like he doesn't go to Italy, but he goes on a very long journey after the Trojan War. Aeneas does not lose men. He does not lose men in the same way that Odysseus does. And in fact, he picks up a couple of Odysseus's men because Virgil wrote in that there happened to be some guy left behind on Circe's island. And I believe there was also somebody, it's either Polyphemus's island or Calypso's island. I think it's Polyphemus's island. But like he left men behind. He ran away from men at times, like the Lystragonians. They were literally hauling rocks at the other ships, and since he wasn't parked in the same area, he just left, you know. So
Hmm.
um the Romans were like, oh, but our hero is going to be a great military leader, he's going to be a captain, he's not going to have any casualties. Pretty much like that what was it, the epic song where they tried to be like Odysseus didn't lose a single man in Troy and now he's
Yeah.
losing all these men on the journey. Like, yeah, Aeneas actually didn't lose any men. Yeah,
The
but
stuff,
yeah,
the stuff
but
I wanted to talk about with this discussion too is, of course, Percy Jackson, because this is what we do with our lives. But it's the way that like the I feel like since a couple people commented this and made me like realize like, oh yeah, that's what Rick is doing. What the hell is wrong with me? That
Mhm.
I've never noticed this before is that like Rick is showing kind of the example between like these are the olden day heroes and
Mhm.
this is the heroes that I think actually should be there. Like making like a very clear distinction
Mhm.
between this is how people used to be, but I don't like that anymore. And I want
Yeah.
my hero to be like this. And like I talked about it last week a little bit, but like Luke and Percy are a really good example of that. That Luke just does honestly some of the stuff that Luke does is very similar to a lot of the things that the old heroes do.
Yeah.
And he's the villain, like extremely so. You are terrified of him for most of the books, and at least you're supposed to be. And Percy is the hero, very much so, and he's not at all like any of the other heroes. Like why every time we read like a Greek retelling, I'm like Percy would beat this person up is because he would beat that person up because he doesn't respect people who treat people like that. Because
Mhm.
he's that Percy is really like the person in a lot of the Greek mythology stories that were never like the focus. They were like the ignored one, the one that was kind of like trampled over while all the other heroes were like out there to save the day and
Yep.
stuff. But instead, in this story, he's like the focus of it all. And it makes like a very clear way. Like, I think it's interesting when people talk about Zoe and her story with Hercules or Heracles in Titan's Curse and like why it's there. Like, I see some people be like, oh, that story is there so that Percy knows what kind of hero he doesn't want to be. And I'm like, no, Percy already knows from like pretty much from as soon as he shows up there as like just himself in the very first book. He knows exactly who he would want to be and what he wants to do. He doesn't need to like hear Zoe's story in
Mhm.
order for him to know that he doesn't want to be like that. Like he hates Hercules after that moment. He immediately is like, "Oh, he's disgusting." Like even in the book, he's like, "Oh, ew. Like why did I ever like him now that I know the truth about him?" There's not like a hero worship moment where he's like, "But I don't want to believe that he's bad like that." That's not Percy. That story is there to show the difference between Percy and literally everyone else, or Luke.
Mhm.
That's why they tell that story because Luke would do something like that and is actively doing that to Annabeth at the same time that they are talking about this in that book. Like there's a very obvious parallel there that he's
Mhm.
trying to make, and I'm not sure people realize it because they think that Percy needs to learn what kind of hero he wants to be. And it's like, no, Percy knows what kind of hero he wants to be. Everyone else needs to get on his page. It's
Yeah.
everyone else who like needs to realize what's like the right path here. He's the one that's right the entire time. He's just waiting for everyone else to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he knows who he wants to be. It's just like those stories are there to show the difference between him and everyone else to be like, no, this is who you should want to be like. You shouldn't
Yeah.
want to be like somebody who's willing to do whatever they can to get whatever they want.
Mhm.
That's
Or
not
just to
like
be remembered.
yeah, just to be that's all you want is for people to remember you. Like that's such a like a vain like egoistic sort of want. Like that's just no, that's not in this story with this author. That's not what he wants this story to be like. He obviously doesn't think that that's important and it's not. It's
Mhm.
not important at all. Like I say this all the time that if I was never like a known person, but people like listened to me about the things that I talked about with abuse and stuff, and I knew that that was important, I wouldn't care that nobody knew that it was me. I would actually be fine with that. I
Mhm.
just want people to listen to me, and so it's like, yeah, I don't think that I need to. I don't need that like egoism. Get it?
Yeah.
Ew. Get it away from me. Like I don't think a lot of abused people like that. It's either you really want that because you want to like avoid everything, or you hate it. It's like
Yeah.
one thing or the other. But we wanted to compare the like older heroes um, to to Percy and Rey from Star Wars, because I was like, we have to have a girl. We can't have them all be boys.
Yeah.
And Aang, because I love all those people a lot, and I feel like Aang and Percy are like somewhat similar, except that Percy is definitely more angry than Aang, and will like punch you right in the neck, like as he should when you deserve it. Um, but there's still the people that um, can like see the villain person in some sort of empathetic light, where when they get to like the end and they're destitute, it's very similar with what's his, I never remember his name in Avatar, the very mean man, Mark Hamill.
Ozai.
Yeah, Ozai. Mark Hamill does the voice, so that always throws me off. When I found that out, I was like, "What?" One thing that is funny about me is that I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender at the same time that I was finishing reading Percy Jackson, so I have like positive memories of those two things like overlapping in my
Hmm.
mind. So I love that we talk about them a lot
Yeah.
at the same time. But yeah, the way that Aang realizes that Ozai is like, well, you're just laying there and you don't have any powers, and I guess I could kill you, but that would be kind of awful and against everything that I am as a person. And so instead, I'm going to make you live with no
Hmm.
powers and feel what it feels like for everyone else that you've been putting this through for your entire life, except that everyone else isn't going to be as horrible as you are. Um, it would be way better. It would be honestly worse for them to have to live through that instead of getting the out, and for him just to kill them and then spend the rest of his life wondering if he should have done that.
Hmm.
Or like wondering, and in the same way with like Percy, where he gives Luke the dagger and is like, you can take yourself out, and he does. Um, and it's the same kind of thing that the thing that really ends both of those situations is that they allowed the other person to make the choice if
Hmm.
they wanted to live or die, and they didn't just take them out. Because I absolutely guarantee you that if Percy had killed Luke, not only would that probably have sent him to a very bad mental place, but it would have probably caused other rebellions from
Hmm.
other kids that were like, he shouldn't have done that, and like wouldn't have wanted to believe that he had to, or thought that Percy was just trying to get control and this was like his way to try to do it. In the same way that if Aang would have killed Ozai, it would have probably turned into that same sort of thing. There would have been some sort of people that rose up thinking, like trying to fight him, thinking that he took him out when he
That
didn't need
happens.
to. And
Actually.
and like that's just what happens when people try to do stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so I just really liked that both of them understand that, and people
Hmm.
look at them as like weak because of that sometimes, but I think is really funny because just my own life experience that it's very easy to just be like violent and angry. It's
Hmm.
a lot harder to like listen to people that um that like remind you of people that, or that have hurt you, and you just like sit there and listen to them and hear them out, and like give them like the chance
Hmm.
to not be like that anymore. Like I could just like not talk to anybody in my entire family if I really wanted to. And I don't think any of them would like question me that much if I did that. Honestly, even like the extended family, I don't think any of them would be, they would be like sad that I didn't talk to them, but I don't think any of them would be like, Shannon's a bad person because she doesn't want to talk to us anymore. They'd be like, no, we fucked up. Like all of them like say all the time, almost every time they see me, sometime my extended family at least, they'll like mention something about how they know that they messed up and that they're sorry and things like that.
Hmm.
And so they're just glad that I give them the chance. And that's way, it's definitely harder, but it's definitely more rewarding.
Yeah.
And that's like those two people's stories. And Ray's story is kind of similar to that too. And
Hmm.
but I really like Ray because she's someone who comes from nothing, like literally nothing, was left on a planet with nothing. Um, didn't like try to block out who her family actually was, and it was just like left to fend for herself. A more exaggerated version of being abused as a kid, most definitely.
Yeah.
But not similar enough themes that I could like understand where she was coming from and how she like hung on to like childish like dolls and like little toys and stuff she has in the beginning. But
Hmm.
her story is definitely, she definitely gets really angry. And I think that's the thing that I like about heroes is that there's always a point where they always get like fed up towards the end because it's like there's only so many times that you can deal with utter bullshit before you just like start yelling at somebody because you just can't take it anymore. And it's always frustrating because then people get upset at you and they're like, why are you so angry? Why are you so upset? And it's like, you should be glad that I have a crippling like fear that I'm a bad person, or otherwise I would talk a lot more like this.
Yeah.
But Ray definitely has like mental breakdowns of sorts in when it comes to the end when she's like having to accept that her family are like literally the worst people ever. But she's able to like get away from that, which is something that I of course love, which is why I always love Rise of Skywalker, and I don't care if you hate it. I
Hmm.
still love it because of that, because she's someone who comes from a really bad family, and instead of just thinking that that just makes her a bad person, she's like, no, I'm gonna be a like me who is a good person, and I'm gonna help everybody and finally stop this craziness that's been going on for like thousands of years in Star Wars, like getting support from, she literally gets support in the ending scene that I always laugh about when Kylo falls into a hole.
Yeah.
She gets support from every single like Jedi that's ever existed in the entirety of time. And they
Yeah.
all show up to support her, and I'm like, yeah, that's basically every scapegoat's dream of your all of your ancestors showing up and being like, let me help you in the way that nobody else ever did when I was alive, or we were alive, or
Hmm.
anything like that. But all of those heroes are people that had every like one of the Force Awakens is like my favorite movie ever. Like when I think about it too much, I start to cry when I'm not even watching it because I haven't watched it in like years because I
Yeah.
used to watch it every single day when I was really did not want to be alive. And so because of that, I just haven't watched it in years. But I still like see it, like clips of it sometimes and cry because how much I love it. But the reason why I love it so much is because Ray and Finn in that movie have every reason to not want to do this, to like not be good people. And that's kind of the story of that of the sequel trilogy, which is why it's my favorite one, is that like Finn grew up in a totalitarian like cult basically,
Hmm.
that like worshipped the emperor, and was able to somehow stay enough of himself that when he realized that things were bad, he was like bye, and was it and just literally like ran away and somehow, survived enough to find Ray. And Ray is somebody who's grown up like having to fight for everything. You wouldn't think
Hmm.
that she would meet somebody like Finn and like trust him or like want to help him, but she's like, "Oh my God, Luke Skywalker is real! Like I have to go meet my hero." And so they're like super traumatized people that are able to still like find a way to stay themselves in some way and not have it be completely ruined. And it's just, and then you see like Kylo, who has like everything that you would ever, that you could possibly ever want in that world. Like his parents are very well off. He got like anything that he could ever want, and he is so angry and the worst person ever, pretty
Hmm.
much in that story. And so it's like, oh yeah, like what would Kylo have done if he was like left on a planet when he was 6 years old and just asked to fend for himself? He would have like thrown himself a pity party and turned into like a mass murderer at like the age of 10 probably. But like these two people are not like that. They don't have anything. Even when he's fighting them, they don't have anything. And they're just like trying not to die because he has the upper hand at every possible moment, and they still somehow beat him, and he's always so angry about that because he doesn't get like why do you, like he literally asks Ray, like, you're just a scavenger, like why do people care about you, you're nothing. And he literally tells her, you're nothing without me, in the second movie. And has that general thing with her of like, why do people care about you when you're nobody and you don't matter? And it's like, I don't know, maybe because you're a dick, and
Yeah.
also because I'm just genuinely a nice person, and that's what people actually like it doesn't matter if you have a like that's a general theme with the Percy Jackson stuff too, is that it doesn't matter if you have a lot of power and you have a lot of like respect from people because they fear you or otherwise. It doesn't matter if you are a horrible person because they're going to find that out and figure that out someday. And there's
Yes.
nothing that you can do to like stop them from ever figuring that out. Like all the things that people do to try to stop it just makes it worse when it does get revealed because you realize all the ways that they tried to, manipulate you and things like that. And you're just like, okay, that just makes it, you're even worse than I thought you were. Now that I realize what you were really doing all that time, when I thought you were just being nice, you're actually trying to stop me from finding out who you really were. And
Hmm.
and I think like the heroes of the olden times are the opposite in the way that they're like, yeah, I'm a bad person, who cares? Like, I don't
Yeah.
care that I'm a bad person. I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to do what I want to do. And if you're in my way, you're a problem and you need to get out of my way now before I kill you. Because how dare you, like, stop me on this, like, magical, like, amazing quest of egoism that I've decided to go on. Um, that's basically what they're like then, that they just were like, how dare you be in my way? But
Hmm.
us now, like, modern heroes now, are the are about like the ones back then were all about like individual glory. The
Hmm.
heroes now that people like at least are about like community. They're about
Yes.
like lifting up not just you, but your people, the people that you care about. Um, and that's what
Well, and
actually matters.
I have to wonder too if that's like it's such a huge flip that you wonder if it's cultural. You wonder if it's
Mm-hmm.
because you were supposed to be a part of a herd back then, so standing out looks a lot better. Now everybody wants to stand out, so being a person of the community are the people that we think of as heroes because like when you say the word hero in just a normal everyday context, we think things like firefighters, like first responders. Um, People that put their life out on the line to save other people's lives. We don't necessarily think like, oh, that guy who rescued 10 children or something, like it's not the same. And also you think of the way that they're fighting wars out on the battlefield. Once again, you're in like a huge herd of people in a
Mm-hmm.
mass of iron and bronze. So the only way you get known in there is if you make your way out of that massive iron and bronze untouched, or at least not the most touched.
Yeah, I do
Um,
think
yeah,
that it is something to do with a lot of like the Captain America comics and a lot of other Marvel comics were started during World War II as
yeah.
a way to like counteract the Nazis. Like that's why Captain America punches a Nazi like right in the face, and he's Jewish. Um, and there's a lot of that's why a lot of comics in the original form are Jewish. And
Hmm.
like Bucky even is Jewish in some iterations because there's so many different versions, especially of him in the beginning. But I
Hmm.
feel like that's when that kind of stuff happened is because people it even happened a little bit before that because J.R.R. Tolkien when he wrote Lord of the Rings, like it's once you find out that he was in World War I, you're like, oh, like that's why you wrote this. Like this is and
Hmm.
like this is very obviously a giant story he wrote about a group of people that was like him remembering the people that he was with in war and community and fighting against these things and like sticking together over everything and friendship being the number one thing, and that's why the characters in that had PTSD because he actually had PTSD from being in World War I. But at a certain point, as like I think society went on, people just kind of realized that like the people in charge are not nice all the time, and so some of the more artistic people just started writing stories where there were heroes that were in those positions of power, but like used it to try to help normal people because they didn't see people doing that
Hmm.
in their actual life, and it just became like this thing that's what we see heroes as, and the idea of being a hero that wants to like suck up to like the people in power are always the people that you don't they're like seen as like edgy or
Hmm.
something like that's like Tony Stark in the Marvel movies, like
Yeah.
he's literally friends with the government. Everyone
He made
he start
bombs, right?
he made weapons of mass destruction. He was a defense contractor for the United States government. Like canonically, he made
Yeah.
bombs that blew up other countries and didn't realize that those bombs would kill people. He had to go on an entire storyline to figure that out. And but even in
Jeez.
like the Civil War movie, he starts this whole battle because he tries to get the Marvel people, all the Avengers to agree to sign up as being like basically independent contractors or hitmen for like the UN or for like the United States government essentially. And it
Okay.
was like, what do you, and like Steve is like the fact that people still argue that Steve is wrong in that movie is mind blowing to me. And like he is the only one that is thinking with his brain in that movie that is like it's a really bad idea for any governmental structure to be the one in charge of deciding when we get to fight people. Like that's scary. Governments are corrupt. They literally did the Winter Soldier one two movies before this one came out about an entire governmental structure being run secretly by Nazis for 70 years. Like, do you want to do that again? um it's wild, but that's who like Tony literally has to go in an entire like story arc in that movie to realize like, oh, the government lies to you sometimes. And it's like, yes, Tony, when you're not a billionaire, they lie to you. They lie to you all the time. And they don't care that, like, Bucky is innocent. They want to kill him anyway. And they spend, like, 2 or 3 years after that movie is over still trying to find him to kill him, even though they know he's completely innocent of everything, because it would be easier for them just to kill him. And he,
Yeah.
like, genuinely does not even understand until the
Yeah.
movie's going on and when you're not somebody like that, like even people who like Tony I think like him because he's like that, like he's more all over the place and messy and all that, and that kind of person, that like antagonistic sort of person is
Hmm.
why they like him as a character. But if he was like before World War II, people might just like him or be like, yeah, you should be like this. And it's like that's not how people feel. Let you guys know if any of the Riordans or anyone involved in this production decides to watch our videos anymore.
Hopefully they're the good ones.
We are and we are working on that like that ebook guide thing. There will never be a time we'll ever charge anybody for it. It will just be
No.
like out there when we finish it. We'll finish it. It won't take very long, honestly, for us to finish it because it's all stuff that we've talked about and we just know before. So
Yeah.
we'll let anybody who's interested know when that's finished. I want to finish that faster more than slower because we don't know what's going on with TikTok again.
I always forget. Yeah.
That like the deadline for somebody else buying it is April 5th, which is
Oh
very
Jesus.
soon.
Yeah, that's coming
That's in
up.
like 2 weeks, and there's like no real indication that anyone is actually going to buy it. And like obviously they could just put out a story saying that they're going to, or Trump could decide to like delay,
Extended
like
longer.
move the like deadline back. But considering that it's him that would be doing that stuff, it's hard to like ever, you can never trust anything that he's doing.
Yeah.
And so if that happens again in like 2 weeks, TikTok will probably be gone for good if something else doesn't happen in the meantime. And so I want to at least try to have that out there for a little while before this app disappears so that it can be there when we're not here anymore in that
Yeah.
weird sort of way if that happens again. And yeah, yeah, yeah. But either way, keep just like keep that in mind too. Of remember to find you, not only us but anyone else that you like to interact with on any other platform, because TikTok is still banned. It's still illegal for us to use it. They're just letting us use it anyway. And so it's hard to know how much longer that will ever last for.
Yeah. With that said, that's a good place to end.
Hmm.
All right, so we'll see you guys in the next week for chapters 3 through, if it's not astronomically long, 3 through 5, I'm thinking. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Bye.